Welcome everybody that's onto our event here. We just decided, Tim and I talked about a year ago about doing this kind of mid-year free event for everybody on Zoom or whatever we do electronically to just kind of talk about the prior season and everything that's going on. A couple of announcements here. We've had one cancellation. Brendan Clement had a personal issue that popped up first thing this morning, and he had to cancel on us. But like I said, this whole thing is just a couple of, three chaser dudes hanging out, talking weather. There's a Q&A button down on the bottom. There's also a on Facebook Live. I'll monitor that chat as well. And if there's any questions there, I'll answer them to whoever's talking. I do expect Josh to be on at some point. I think he was thinking more around 2 o'clock, which may work out perfect. So we will see what happens with him. We'll kind of just talk about the hurricane season or the lack thereof. Also, I want to thank Stormfront Freaks podcast. They've been a big supporter of ours. Something that we are doing in the Winter Summit, the in-person summit in February, is our Friday is going to be a major safety training event all day Friday. And on that Friday, we're going to have all kinds of training. So we're not going to have a whole lot of speakers, but we're going to have a whole lot of training. And they're a big proponent to it right now. And they are going to actually donate a bunch of safety equipment to everybody that shows up. So I want to thank them for sponsoring this event today and in the future. So great things that Phil's doing. And I would like to thank them. The other announcement is we are going to be having the in-person summit 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So right now it's just posted for Saturday and I believe Friday and Saturday. So it looks like we're gonna have 3 days. We've had such a great turnout. The National Weather Service is talking with me. It looks like a really big event right now, and I would like everybody to think about that as we get into the winter. So from there, today's format is just gonna be a bunch of guys talking. We're gonna have some presentations by Tim and Jeff here. And then just a lot of talk and a lot of questions from you guys. That you've got two of the best storm chasers, most renowned storm chasers over the last 30, 40 years. And anything you ask, they will know and they will answer. And this is part of what we're doing. And so, Tim, I'll let you take it from here.
Really, I'm going to go over one case study, the Morton, Texas supercell. Jeff, did you chase that?
Nope, I didn't chase that day. I was in between taking people from New York out on a tour, and they could not go out that day. And I was in between chases and doing stuff with Barron, so I didn't chase. But I chased. I'm going to present about May 4th outbreak. But okay. yeah, that was one of those deals that a lot of boundaries collided out there. So I don't, I saw it. It was very interesting. You really had to be on top of your game that day to almost like the tornado we had here in Tulsa and Broken Arrow about 2 weeks ago, right? I'm at 99 degrees and boundaries collided over Tulsa and a meso low. And next thing you know, we got tornadoes in southeast Tulsa and been 95 degrees with no risk, no nothing, right? It's just amazing.
Yeah, we had a larger scale boundary that was kind of a cold front outflow boundary. And then it got reinforced by earlier convection that day. And those are some keys. Now, the environment was pathetic, and we're going to talk about that, of why it's pathetic and how come a storm can develop in a pathetic environment. And I think that's going to be the topic. I've got about a 30-minute presentation, maybe 40-minute presentation to go over. And that's really it for me.
Okay.
Now I'm suffering a little bronchitis. So I'm going to cough occasionally through this. Thank you, Indonesia.
Yeah, your trip looked like it was pretty amazing over there, Tim.
It's crazy. It's a crazy trip, 46 days on that's the longest vacation I've ever had. But they had 2 3-week trips back to back, and I didn't want to go over there just for one. So given that distance, it's a long distance. It's a difficult journey to get there. And I didn't realize there was going to be so much flying, island hopping, to do 23 internal flights and then 4 international flights in 6 weeks. That was just every other day, airport.
That feels like my travel last 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's like, that was pretty crazy. So,
Yep.
but I saw a lot of great things that I'll never see again in my life. So that's the reason why I do it.
Cool, cool. We've got about 1 minute here. I'm just going to do our normal intro, and then I'll kind of lead into the summit stuff, Tim, and then I'll hand it over to you.
Yep, I'll do the share screen, and hopefully, things will go well. This was a very interesting chase day. I was not very excited about it. I thought, well, I have a job in Lubbock the next day, so I might as well go out and chase it. It was 2% as SPC. That's the first thing I look at. I don't know if you look at the SPC outlooks in the morning, just to give you an idea of what's going on. But certainly I did not expect to see any kind of a big tornado that day. I just thought it'll be HP, and I'll explain the reasons why I thought it was going to be HP and not anything here in a moment. But certainly this image by Colby Martin was one of my favorites. Thank you for the use of this image here for this title slide. And it's just an amazing tornado. Now, maybe the tornado wasn't that big, but the dust, of course, really enhances it, but still very impressive. So here's the Lubbock Weather Service summary. They said it produced 8 tornadoes over a 2-hour period. I saw a couple. I didn't see all of them. I did not see the first tornado, which they said was southeast of Maple. I'd be interested to see any photos that anybody would have of that one, because I did not see that as I was en route. And I had made a critical error in my logistics that I'll tell you about in a moment, which cost me a good view of the wedge that I think lasted more than 15 minutes. Maybe some of you will indicate to me what times you had, but I thought, just for myself, I didn't video the whole thing, but I thought it lasted more than 15 there. And the third tornado developed east of the wedge. I did not see that one. So again, if you have any pictures of that, I'd like to see that. Now, there were 2 other tornadoes that occurred in rain wrap circulation near PEP. I was not about to punch the hail core of that thing. That was really well wrapped by that. So I decided to drop south near a town of Pettit, and I saw a tornado there a little later on. That's northeast of Whiteface, for those of you who don't know where Pettit is. And then there were 2 more tornadoes that occurred after dark, and I did not see them. I decided it was, when it's dark, I don't like to play that game with Mother Nature, so I decided to go to Lubbock for dinner. So interesting. Look at the tornado warning polygons here. You can see this storm turned to the right, and there's a reason for that. There was an outflow boundary there that was from a prior convection, which was actually enhanced by convection that was earlier that afternoon. And so that kind of double reinforcement of cooler air really enhanced that low level helicity on that boundary. And that's why that storm was the storm. So to give you an idea of my chase route that day, I started out from Dallas that morning. I drove over to Plainview, Texas, and then zigzagged down. And just north of Littlefield, I made a critical error. I stopped for about 20 minutes so I could look at data and decide, do I want to go after this storm or not? It really looked like a cluster of storms to me on radar. Didn't have any well-defined couplets. So I held just north of Littlefield until I could see something of interest. And that was really a mistake, because had I had those extra 15 to 20 minutes, I could have been in a much better position. As it was, I went south to Littlefield and west towards PEP, and then stopped at this turn just northeast of Morton. And that's where I saw the glimpses of the wedge tornado through the dust. Very dusty in that area. I tried to maneuver around to get so I better visibility, but for some reason I just could not get a better visibility. Eventually, after the wedge, I went back towards PEP, and I was not going to be in any attempt to go through that circulation, as we'll see. And so I dropped south, and I'm glad I did, because this kind of had a tail on the storm in terms of an echo. It reformed. Another series of tornadoes occurred just west of Pettit. There's actually a paved road west of Pettit, and I took it a couple miles, and that's where I saw the next tornado there, and then decided to go back to Lubbock for a celebration dinner. So I'm sure everybody has studied this a little bit and knows that this is the 13Z outlook. Now, I always take these 13Z outlooks with a grain of salt, because they're based off of night's time data. So it's old data, nighttime data that SPC is looking at. Here we have a broad slight risk area, and we have a 2% area for Southwest Texas. So what I was really interested was, what would be the change to 1630Z, because that's when SPC gets morning data, and they can look at the morning data and find out, should they update it. So the outlook says here, large hail, isolated severe gusts would be the main concerns. Okay, that's exactly what I figured. They did say several supercells are possible, given the strong varying flow with height, which there was. I didn't think the effective shear was that strong, but still, that's enough for a supercell. They said tornado condition potential appears very conditional and relegated to the localized boundary, which I saw that there was a boundary out there. When there's a boundary in West Texas in May, guess what you do? You go chase it. But there were a few things that stood in my mind that said, maybe I shouldn't chase it. And I'll tell you why. We never know what's going to happen, but with storm scale interactions are definitely possible. And modest is a word that I wouldn't have used. I would have said atrocious ambient photographs, as we will see that the photographs were atrocious. The environment was certainly not one that I would expect to produce sustained supercells, tornadics, storms. That would be something I would not expect, and we'll go see why. So here's the thing I really start paying attention on is the 1630. Kept the slight risk, kept the 2%. If you read this, you'll see they've kind of backed off. The word tornado is not here. There certainly are a few supercells now, and maybe some persistence, 1,000 to 2,000 joules, but certainly not what the morning outlook was saying based on the older data. So I'm seeing this kind of backing off of it rather than the other way around. I was sitting there going, well, I'm not all that excited about it. I'll drift over to Plainview, and if something develops down by Lubbock or further west, I'll go after it, but wasn't really that excited about it. But the key was I decided to still chase it. 20Z, so I'm already out there in West Texas, and it's still slight risk and still 2%. Hey, look, over in South Carolina, there's 5%. They have a much better chance of tornadoes over there than they do in West Texas. So that kind of gives me another idea that maybe they're just not really excited about what's happening over there in West Texas. And sure enough, the discussion has reflected that. Now we're talking about an NSCS that develops because of the bad wind profiles that there are, even though they extended the slight risk northward into cooler and drier air into the panhandle. So it just really was, again, no mention of the word tornado. So by 3 o'clock, really kind of backing off even further, I think, of whether this would be a tornadic event. So the great thing about that is that you need to do your own analysis. SPC is more general oriented. So let's look and see what we have here. Well, we have this outflow boundary. We know about this. What I didn't know about was that there was convection that was down near San Angelo that fired up earlier that helped reinforce that outflow boundary. I did not know that at the time. Had I known that at the time, maybe I would have been a little more gung-ho about chasing this event. But nonetheless, I decided to get out towards Plainview. We can see here some of the surface, and this is at 18Z. So in the noon, 1 o'clock area, we're seeing 50 dew points in Lubbock. Now that's not something that I get excited about. Even at that height of terrain, I don't get very excited about 50 dew points. But I do like what's happened down at San Angelo. We have almost 60 dew points there, and down further south, Big Spring, 61. So I kind of like that. Maybe that moisture will make it up. We got a boundary there, maybe deeper moisture to the southeast. Maybe those two will get together. You do have a nice upslope. That always works for West Texas in terms of low cloud bases and a nice boundary. No real dry line here to speak of. And you're just dealing with some forcing along the boundary. However, by 23Z, which is an hour before tea time, really the dew points came up 5, say in Lubbock, 55. This is really marginal there. We're having about 23-degree temperature dew point spreads. So the cloud bases aren't going to be that low, except right up at the storm, of course. The boundaries kind of moved a little bit further north here, but maybe, this is kind of analyzed a little too far north. The boundary is still actually south of Lubbock, and we'll see that on satellite as well as radar. You'll see that where that boundary actually is. It's south of Lubbock here. And of course, the deeper moisture really never made it up there. So that was a real problem. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of hesitated there near Littlefield to decide, should I go after this thing or not? So I like to look at things in the morning, of course, upper air wise, here at 850, and this is near the ground out there in the west, so and at the ground in the mountains areas. So we're dealing with pretty weak winds, 20 knots, not too bad though. Amarillo a little better. Looking at 700 millibars, what I'm looking for is something out west. Well, we do have a closed low up in Wyoming. That's nice. The trough, that's also nice because now you're going to have southwesterly flow. Nice 30-knot flow out of the southwest at Amarillo. I like that. But there's only 10 knots at El Paso. So really, kind of yucky there. Albuquerque, 20. I'd like to see higher winds out and further west coming in, but it's weaker, not stronger. So that does not bode well for tornadic supercells. But at 500, we have 35 knots in Amarillo. That's nice for supercells. But then down at Midland, barely a breath. And out at El Paso, 20 knots. Again, really weak, not something that's getting me excited. I mean, look at Dodge up there, 50 knots, okay? But that's up in the cooler air up there. So is there some sweet spot there? Is there something that we don't see here in the data that, upper air stations are so far apart? So those are the big question marks. And then at 300 millibars, nice troughingness still, 35, 40 knots. Look at that through West Texas. That's enough to ventilate the updrafts. But again, looking west, only 20 knots at El Paso. That's pathetic and not really something I'm excited about. But there is this very strong jet coming out of the northwest. And the big question is here, will it make it in time for another 12 hours? Will it take 12 hours from there and make it to where we need it, where in West Texas? So looking at some more pathetic environment here, look at the Midland Sounding this morning, in the morning, 69 over 53, weak winds all the way up to almost 300 millibars. Obviously you wouldn't expect much Cape in the morning, but there is a little weak turning, obviously nothing there in the SARS or the effective layer to show you what's going on there tornadic wise. The hodograph is, abysmal hodograph, okay? So what did it look like there at 0Z? Well, at 0Z, 80 over 55, you can see some sort of a cap up there in Midland anyways. Cape is most unstable, 1428. That's not too bad, but supercell 0.2, no SARS matches. Guess what? They got a match now, right? And effective layer, look at that hodograph. Terrible hodograph, absolutely. So if I saw this, and I'm glad I didn't see this, otherwise I probably would have made the decision north of Littlefield just to forget it. But it's the radar which told me to pursue it. And here's Amarillo in the morning, really junky cold 51 over 41, you know, and then in the evening, big cap 64 over 52. Again, nothing in the SARS or effective layer STP. So junky photograph again. So not very good. So now you're going to depend on the forcing issue along a boundary because nothing else in the environment really looks that good. There is some CAPE though. Here is 18Z CAPE, the 2000. I like the gradient on the west side there pointing into New Mexico. Good area for storm initiation there. And if we just click through it, you see it increases the 3000 by 20Z. And I'm looking at this here and saying, not too bad, but then it goes away, gets mixes out or whatever, and comes back further southeast towards dusk. So then looking at the supercell composite, 18Z, it's a 2, not too bad, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, okay, it goes up to 8 around Lubbock, an hour before tea time, and then 12, okay? So the supercell composite parameter sensed something going on there, and that was interesting to see. And then the SIGTOR, not very much in the afternoon. As we approach the evening here, we're seeing right at tea time, a 2. But other than that, 23Z was 0.5, so not very good there. Guess what, folks? A blue box was issued, not a T box. Again, going back to what we were seeing earlier in the discussions of not seeing this as a tornado situation, but maybe an NSCS situation. The environment was lousy. It wasn't really anything tornado-wise, but there was this boundary, and that boundary was actually enhanced by convection later that afternoon. Those are some real keys here. Now, if you look here on the satellite, and this is at 2316, so this is where you can see the storm that's going to be tornadic is I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's right on the New Mexico-Texas line here. But notice the arc of convection. Guess what? I think that is kind of an outflow boundary there. And the convection earlier was reinforcing that, as we'll see on a radar loop here shortly. So that's interesting to me that we have this boundary. Look at that clearing in southeastern New Mexico. So plenty of heating out there in southwest Texas. So now on 2333 radar, jumping out of Lubbock radar. And again, I'm about probably Littlefield area. I'm not seeing much here that catches my eye for tornado. And this is at 2333. But you can see the convective line here. This boundary feeds right into the storm. It's a complex of different cells. We'll see what happens to the south end now as we step through this. This is a radial velocity image, so not a tight meso by any means. Some weak circulation, but more of like a really monster cluster. All right, but my visual cue, this is driving west towards the storm. You see the wall cloud there. There could be a tornado under there at that time. I'm not sure, but certainly I love the structure of this thing. And I saw that this is really going to be a spiraling storm. You can see that from what the clouds are moving very fast. So how can that happen in an environment where there wasn't much in the way of mid-levels winds? And I think it goes back to one of the things that I've kind of learned over the years is storms tend to modify their local environments, whether it's the effect of a storm. I think that all of a sudden it decides to pull in the air and it modifies that local environment so that a sounding that is taken 100 miles away or even 50 miles away is not representative of what's happening right there at the storm. And in keeping in mind, when you're looking at these outlooks and these storm prediction center products like the supercell composite. And these are all based on mostly synoptic scale, some mesoscale, but not storm scale. And that's what we're all chasing, is the storm scale. So it's like a lot of these things, the products that we're looking at, only we're looking for little subtleties in the data, but you got to be out there, because that stuff does not tell you the storm scale. I know we're trying to infer the storm scale from a mesoscale or a synoptic scale product, but it's not going to happen, and you need to be out there. So at 2338, things are starting to come together a little bit. We have more concentrated hail core here, and I'd like to know if anybody knows the size of hail out there. I did not sample the hail. I stayed out of it. But if somebody knows what the hail sizes were, I'd like to know that. There's some monster hail west of Enox there. So then, a couple cells there. But it was interesting to see this kind of an appendage on the southwest. And that's when I decided I'm definitely going to go for the storm, because that could turn into a hook echo. On the radial velocity, not seeing much here, just weakness there, but maybe an RFD will form, and maybe we'll get ourselves a concentrated couplet. So by 2343, wow, things are coming together pretty fast now. I'm coming in on that highway just northeast of Morton there. That I can't even read it, but that's that paved road northeast of Morton I'm coming in on. Hook developing for sure. Now we're seeing more congealing of the heavy hail core here. And let's take a look. Now we're seeing better kind of couplets going to start happening here. It's a good RFD, nothing real tight yet, but something that certainly has caught my interest, and needing to get north of Morton if I can, but I couldn't make it up there. By 2348, this is just before the first tornado was being reported. Nice hook echo here, and nice couplet here. And I'm talking about this couplet, I'm talking about something in this area right here. And this would be, near southeast of Maple, southwest of Enox in here. And a tornado was then reported here. I didn't see it. Maybe someone saw it. Maybe someone has a photo of it. But then at 2353, it kind of relaxes a little bit. It was kind of just one volume scan is all there was. Here it looked like, okay, outflow's taking over. It's all over, right? No, wasn't the case. Then what's happening here? We have another cell coming in out of the southwest. Well, this is interesting. If you look at a radar loop of this, you'll see cells are constantly coming in out of the southwest and slamming into the back end. Now that can be a good thing or a bad thing. In this case, it happened to be maybe a good thing, and that it helped channel the inflow towards the base of that updraft. And that may help. It also might provide a little bit of extra buoyancy there by that forcing that's going on. And there's a rain course, so that's actually some cooler air coming in from the south. So that's why you're kind of squeezing here this inflow, I think. And then we're back to at 03, a nice couplet again, sitting here southwest of Enox. And again, tornado was reported there. I could see glimpses of this tornado developing. Now, what's going to happen here? 08 here as this merger takes place. Will it then completely collapse that hook and game over? What's going to happen here? Well, it's interesting. It kind of comes in. The tornado still continues, even though this is mergers taking place. What happened was I could see a lot more RFD dust coming in. There's my location at 708. Hail cores merging. Then the dust is picking up even more and more, so losing sight of the tornado. And then at the 13 here, as the merger continues, then the tornado begins to dissipate here, as almost a handoff is occurring here. Still a couplet going that you can see two couplets. See one, which is the wedge tornado that's going on here, and then this other tornado, which I did not see. Others if you saw it, I'd like to see a picture of that here to the east, because I had a lot of dust that was obscuring me because I was down right about here. So I was several miles south here, let's call it maybe 5 miles south, and I could not see this tornado here to the east at 713. So now with the merger, it's really beefed up that hook echo and a lot of hail there as it's wrapping around. Fortunately, I did not get much hail. I was able to move east and keep ahead of the hail that was coming on down. So I'd like to know if any chasers were here on this highway south of Enox, what hail did you get if you were down in this area? And oh, by the way, here's another cell coming in to merge with it. So are we going to get kind of a repeat of what we had? We'll have to see. So right at 723, we're not seeing any couplets here. No tornado activity is going on to my knowledge at that time. This is kind of a transition here. It almost looks HP-ish now with a big beefy hook coming in, Pac-Man style. I went all the way over here to this community of Pep, and I sat here watching back. But I'll tell you, with the dust obscuring, I couldn't see what was going on back in there. I don't know if anybody braved that and went in there and got to see anything, but I did not see what was going on, although I did see a lot of rotation going on back there. So this second cell comes in and to merge and helps RFD, and now we got a big HP mess going on. So I'm not going to go any further because I just wanted to cover the Morton Enox storm, but the other storms, the other tornadoes that develop later on, I'll save that for maybe the big convention coming up in February. But you can see what a cluster outbreak this was based on boundaries, and the boundaries being a real key player here. And that's what we have to keep an eye on. Despite the fact that the environment looked lousy, the storm decided to say the heck with the environment. I'm going to do my own thing. And a boundary, a low level helicity can overcome a lot of the other obstacles in an atmosphere. The winds, for example, some cape, for example. They can overcome those if you have this magical low level forcing, low level helicity. So in summary, the Morton Enox supercell developed on an outflow boundary, reinforced by outflow from earlier storms. It started as a cluster of storms being added to by other mergers. The environment was pathetic for tornadic storms. However, the storm modified its environment and it turned around to the southeast. So that really enhanced the storm relative helicity. And the surface inflow just kept getting stronger. So the SRH was getting stronger. I think the key point to take away is models could not resolve the mesoscale and storm scale features. Unfortunately, we have to rely upon these models, but we cannot infer what storm scale is going to happen. We really can't. We just got to get out there. So I always love the target outflow boundaries. I think they are why we call them the Panhandle magic, the West Texas magic that's occurring there. So I'm going to switch here, if I can, for just a second. See if I can get back to this, because I wanted to show this before we leave it here. This is a radar loop from Lubbock. And you see this and you see this. Okay, one is an outflow boundary. That was an older outflow boundary, and the other one was an outflow boundary generated by convection down here. And you can see what happens to the storm. It takes a right. It increases its own SRH here, right behind the boundary. Look at that. Isn't that magical? That's just amazing. And that's why you got to get out there, if anything. You see a boundary, terrible environment. All it takes is the southern cell. You see the mergers taking place that were actually occurring here. One merger, two mergers, other cells coming in back here to help this out. So definitely was some sort of a weak spot here going on in the atmosphere, where it was very unstable there, where it was just decided to pick that spot, an anchor spot, if you will, but then it turned to the southeast. So that's all I got. I hope that was of some interest to you about how this very marginal event turned out to be a big tornado.
Yeah. So Tim, we do have a couple of questions that was coming off of Facebook. And one of them was, in your opinion, if it would have had more of structures to hit, do you think it would have been an EF5?
I don't think it probably was an EF5. I think it was a big windbag tornado. You know, we think of wedges as being EF5s, but not all wedges are that way. This was a pretty dusty tornado. I think the actual concentrated part of that tornado was quite small, and you're seeing almost a mezzo here in action on the ground rather than the actual tornado. And of course, we never know what the rating is going to be unless it hits something. So that's the key here. And if you take this and put it in the middle of Lubbock, Texas, would you have had a higher rating? You know, probably so. It just depends on what it hits. That's really how tornadoes are rated. And I know there's been a lot of tornadoes that don't get rated or get rated pretty low out in West Texas because they don't hit anything. And that's always an issue. We'll never be able to get to the bottom of it until we have DIs for every square inch of ground.
Yeah. Jeff, do you want to jump in here and make any comments about the Morton tornado? Or
Yeah, I was quite depressed while I was watching the boundary slide, as Tim pointed out very well. I was watching it from home. Had other commitments going on before and after that day, but I can tell you when I was watching the mergers and I'm watching the couplets and then watching the live streams and the pictures coming out, it was like, and Tim's exactly right. You can take the worst of conditions, you get in the panhandle, and you get these outflow boundaries are colliding, and they start going down these boundaries, and all of a sudden the conditions went from no play at all to, you know what, I've got a really good chance of seeing a tornado. And you don't know until you've got to commit 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. You got to get out there because the panhandle, I say the panhandle, there are no rules. Forget everything you learn in college, forget everything you learn at OU, right? And you can throw everything out the window when it comes to Texas Panhandle and boundaries. And there's a lot of things that will happen you never would have dreamed of when you left that morning, right? We've all seen these surprise tornadoes, and there's been case after case, as Tim very well documented on this one. You've got to go out there. And a lot of times you can take a real weak environment and actually could end up being the biggest event of the year. And we've seen this over and over again. It's a great job, Tim, on your presentation.
okay. Okay, yeah, you have a message on the Q&A there, Tim. I'll let you read that on your own. On that, we also had Daniel Shaw wanted to let you know that hail was 2.75 inches, which was what he recorded in there.
Okay.
So, which is that's another thing you talk about, Jeff, about the Texas Panhandle. I've noticed even on the lower end days of hail, you know, you're thinking, oh, maybe no more in golf balls, and you know, we have softballs to tennis balls just because it seems like the Texas Panhandle just always gets those better updrafts that are unexpected. I mean, how many days of 2% days we go out there and we're seeing back sheared anvils and crisp updrafts that you're like, well, I didn't think we had that much over level flow, but it's just something about the Panhandle I've always noticed that you always just get that little bit more juice. And Tim, you may be able to talk about that a little more, just the decades of chasing in the Panhandle you've done.
Well, I kind of look at this way. The upper air doesn't tell you the whole story. These upper air stations are 400 miles apart. So there's something going on maybe in between. There's a long way between Amarillo and Midland. There's a long way between Albuquerque and El Paso. Things can sneak through there, especially when you're dealing with troughs. We can get these little jet maxes working their way through. Certainly there had to be a lot of ventilation of that storm to get that anvil out of there so it wouldn't collapse on itself. It didn't move very much, did it? So it drifted kind of east and then southeast. Well, if you don't have very good winds aloft to ventilate that storm, it'll just crash on down through it and you're going to get an HP for a little while, and then it's over. So there's something at multiple levels going on here that were peaking out. The inflow, we all know, was tremendously strong. Well, mid levels, we could see spiral banding. That indicates that thing was spinning like a top. And then it had to have pretty good upper flow to ventilate that updraft. So that doesn't bode well for 30 knots. I mean, it had to be stronger than that aloft. So I just think that these synoptic scale things that we look at just don't give us the whole story, that we're really still behind the times. What, we're launching balloons still? I mean, come on. We should be able to have, every square mile already know the sounding from a satellite, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. So maybe in the future we will, and we'll know by having satellite images that can sample that, we can get to know what those environments are.
So you guys have chased, I don't know, between the two of y'all, probably 100+ years in the Texas Panhandle or in general. Of course, we've had the past incidents of chaser issues with traffic, safety concerns, mud. In y'all's opinion, how do you chase that, and how do you stay safe? And what message would you give to other chasers, especially in these areas where we're getting these, 400 to 500 cars in an area? What do you guys do to stay safe, and what would you, anywhere from the newest of chasers to the experienced chasers, what is y'all's opinion on it, and the things we could do to be safe?
Well, I'm looking at May 4 and the 23rd, the chasers pretty much are behaving themselves. My only problem is when you're getting in terms of dust, then the brake lights start, and now you get a big conga line of stopped traffic. I know it's difficult to drive in dust, and sometimes you can't do it at all, but we all don't drive the same speeds. And it's because of that we end up with traffic jams. So that does concern me, although on those two cases, I did not have a problem in getting in and getting out. But Jeff, what do you think?
Well, we've all had that experience in different places, different times. Boy, it's tough. I know on Mangum Day, which was a very high-end event, turned out to be a single tornado that everybody was nearby. I look for, there's quite often I'll leave my spotter net ID off for multiple reasons. I don't want the crowds and masses to know where I'm at, but I'll turn it on once I get to the storm, right? But the other thing is, if I see a line of 20, 30, 40 miles or cars, 100 cars in front of me 5 miles, I'm already pre-thinking, okay, the storm's moving this direction. It's not going to tornado for the next 30 minutes probably. I've got time to go this direction to get back, waiting for it over here. So I'm constantly looking at to stay away from the masses. As I did Mangum Day, I actually saw the big line in front of me, and I actually ended up taking a county road north for about 5 miles, then got back over the paved road, then got back into Mangum to see the tornado coming in the city. But it's a problem, and especially on the big high risk days or the big days where you only have one target area, right? You've got to look for those. Just like this year, May 4th, there's a lot of chasers out that day. You either had to go back north of Paducah or back south and then cut east. On the May 4th event, I decided to take a farm oil road, Highway 1168 to the east over to Cromwell and south with the Vernon and Lockett there to stay out of the way from the masses. And it paid off that day, but it doesn't always pay off. You have to go to the back roads, and sometimes you get stuck in mud. And you may miss a few tornadoes. I've missed a few tornadoes because I try to stay away from the masses. But at the end of the day, it generally pays off. Not always, but generally it does.
Yeah, I know the one thing that we're harping is being prepared. And so I would like, what do you do on a preparation day? What do you guys take? What do you guys do if you're going to have a kind of a normal chase day? You go out. What do you guys do in your minds just to stay safe and to prepare yourselves for the day?
I'll take that first.
Yeah.
One of the things I do is, depending on what state I'm in, right? Where am I waking up at that night, the night before? Is it harvest time? Are we late May and June? Are we cutting wheat in the plains, right? I'm thinking about traffic. If it's depending on where I'm at, I'm thinking about roads. Are there construction on roads? I look at the State Department of Transportation. The roads are closed in these areas, right? That's really important. I'm thinking about gas. How far are the gas stations apart? What's my drive point from here to my target point? How many hours is that? Do I have enough rest the night before to get to that without being exhausted when I get there? So I'll make good decisions. I can tell you, having something good to eat the morning of, like in the breakfast. I think breakfast, a lot of people sometimes will skip breakfast. I think breakfast and lunch is critical when you're out chasing, because when you have food on your stomach, I think you make good decisions when you're out in the field, because you burn up a lot of energy. Even though you're driving, you burn up all those calories, just the thought process, because you're constantly thinking about the environment, the roads, their surrounding area, construction. I'm thinking about, hydroplaning. I'm thinking about all these things going through my mind when you're out chasing. And it really depends on what state you're in, right? What's it like there? When's the last time that particular area has been hit by a big tornado? Are the people going to be very situation aware because they're in a moderate risk with a good chance of tornadoes? Are they going to be prone to do unusual things? If a tornado warning goes out for a particular state, Moore, Oklahoma, for example, if you happen to be in Moore on I-35, they've been hit a number of times. They're very situation aware, so you got to really be aware of your situation, what kind of environment you're going to be chasing in. And it's always in the back of your mind, always.
I start the day like everybody starts, looking at the SPC outlooks. That's just the beginning. Then you get to work. It's not the end, it's the beginning. I look at a bunch of models. Yes, I look at the College of DuPage site. That's one of my favorites, SPC's forecasting site, looking at what the models are showing throughout the day. So certainly I look at the HER model. That to me is one of the better models to look at. And it gives me ideas. And then I kind of pick a target around 8, 9, 10 in the morning. I pick a target area and I focus on that. And then I do make adjustments during the day. But like Jeff was saying, you need to eat. And I like to eat. So I like to get out to my target like around lunch hour or maybe a little bit before. And then find a place that I can just sit down, look at the data again, have a nice lunch before continuing, because then I can tweak my forecast that way. And then, it's a waiting game, of course. But in the case of the Morton, Texas event, I didn't have very much time to wait. I did go out towards a little field and kind of hold up there because what I saw on radar really didn't excite me initially. And I'm just not going to get involved with an HP, that I can't see anything. So I should have just said the heck with that. There's a storm, go after it. I should have done that. And then I would have probably gotten closer to it. But we do make these kinds of logistical mistakes. And one logistical mistake can actually cost you the whole chase. So I'd rather minimize those if I can and get out there as soon as I can. That's really it. And continually monitor it all the way through the event. And once the storm is up, yes, I do have radar scope. I do use it on the phone here. So that brings me in when there is cell service. And that's another thing. You've got to watch the lower right-hand corner on the time. And Carson, he has a Barron system, so that helps fill in. When the bandwidth goes down, we have a backup. So that's really nice to have.
Okay, so we're going to talk about May 4th, 22 this year, right? So one of the things is ended up being start off with an enhanced risk the day before, day 2. And then it went to enhanced risk with the big 10% across Southwest Oklahoma and Southern Oklahoma. We'll get to that in a second. One of the first things I do when I get up in the morning, a lot of times I look at all the observations, right? Now what the model's forecasting out before. I know there can be, as this particular, there's overnight convection, there's a lot of stuff going on. So you want to look at the soundings, right? So 950 and 850, 925 millibars. We got a really good low-level jet across northwest Texas here, and that warm front's coming north. Dry line's starting to set up out in New Mexico. And as we come on south here, what happened here? So at 850, you can see we've got a really strong 40-knot jet out in the Texas Panhandle. The 850 warm front's already lifted up in northern Oklahoma, so that's continuing to lift north. 700 millibars. There's a wave coming out in the morning at 12Z across Northwest Texas and Southwest Oklahoma. There's thunderstorms break out early in the day at around 11 or noon as I made my way down the lot, and you can see thunderstorms developing just east of the I-35, I-44 corridor in Southwest Oklahoma. We got on up until look on up in the atmosphere at 500 millibars. What we're looking for, you got 40 knots over the body of Oklahoma. The main waves back here, we've got a jet core around the base with there's a wave. There's another wave back here with 50 plus knots coming out at 500. So I just want to look upstream, like what's going on. We're going up higher and look at 300 millibars. And wow, does it look fabulous? You got a big diaphragm jet coming out over the Texas Panhandle, a lot of wind, 80 to 90 knots coming out, which looks really, really good. We jump up on 200 millibars. Wow, we've got a lot of upward motion coming out. We've got a really strong flow. And again, we look at this pattern over the Southwest Oklahoma. It looks really, really good. So at 12Z, they issued a big stretched out enhanced along the warm front from the Texas Panhandle across southern Oklahoma. It looked really, really good. Well advertised both on the day 2 and the day 1. The first one at 60 and 12Z, we have a 10% hatch. Obviously, that gets everybody's attention. I'm like everybody else, I'm already on the road heading south. Well, about 16:30, they said, hey, we're going to, the conditions look so good. And there's a lot of clearing and heating going on south of the warm front across western Texas, northwest Texas body, and southwest Oklahoma. This warm front's lifting up into southern Oklahoma. It's very warm, very humid, and things are looking really, really good now for significant outbreak of severe weather. When they did that, they also increased the Southwest Oklahoma, Texas Panhandle, Northwest Texas to 15% hatched, which is also something that was really, really forecasted, right? Did a really good job on that. So I'm going to jump to, stop sharing that, and I'm going to go to my next screen here, and I'm going to go to this interactive. Let me find my list. Here's what I want. Oops. You see anything right now?
No, I don't see anything. I see you.
Give me just, okay, no problem. Just a second here. Wish share would be a little bit more flexible. What are you seeing there? Should be this right here. See that now?
Yep, I got that. I can see that.
Okay, so this is on the SBC page, so it's kind of it's a way to look at analysis, not only for the current events, but also when you sometimes if you bust, sometimes if you want to look at what's going on after the fact. Where did I go? Where did I not go? As far as the right setup in the right location, which is really, really, really important, right? So on this particular day, if you look at the 4 panel. Man, look at this. They've got a big old hatch here, 45%. And again, in the Texas Childress area, big, 15% hatch for tornado, moderate risk. We have that as we go on. And as the time went on at 20Z, they enhanced the moderate risk, brought it all across Oklahoma, as well as the warm front all across southern Oklahoma. Again, everything else about the wind damage in that stayed about the same. So they did a really good job on that. And as the day unfolded, as we got in the afternoon, that warm front was lifting north. And one of the things I noticed as I came down a lot and I got down here in northwest Texas, I was watching the warm front. I got in south of Childress down here in the cold area down in this area. And one of the things I was watching this warm front up here in the afternoon. And the sky looked pretty good. I mean, there's storms on it. They come out and start building out of Lubbock. And the towers look good. They look decent. But I was noticing on satellite, there's some really nice jet streak coming out down here north of Midland and south of Lubbock. And I could see some tower and cube down here east of the Cap Rock. And that got my attention. And so one of the things they're talking about here on their discussion is they're talking about ongoing supercells at southwest of Childress to produce 2-inch diameter hail. They move east into the deeper moisture, the backed winds, and the cap starting to erode as upper waves coming out. Increased low-level jet, promote large storm relativity. We'll talk about that. Tornado potential is expected to increase as the storm's environment, is going to increase as it goes east, which it did, which is really pretty cool on what happened. Then as we go on down here, we start getting these watches, and finally at around 5 or so, we get this tornado watch that comes out. This is at 1:55. We get this tornado watch back here in the Texas Panhandle in Western Texas. And in this watch, it has pretty good sized coverage. There's the current radar. We had some early morning or early mid-afternoon thunderstorms off this low level jet over here, just near the Wichita Falls area. I almost wanted to play with those storms when they officially start going around 1 or 2 o'clock. And I'll let them go, even though I knew there was going to produce tornadoes over here. I was going back in the Texas Panhandle where you have better visibility and maybe a chance to see something at farther distance without being in the rain and the guns and the hills of South Central Oklahoma. So I chose that area. You have some tornado warnings ongoing back south of Tulsa with storms training along the warm front down there on I-40, and which was very interesting, right? So probabilities, they have real high probability. 2 more tornadoes was 80%, 60% chance of an F2 to F5. So really high probabilities. Tornado watch of 6 more reports is 95%. So that catches your attention as far as what's going to happen. So that's kind of sets the stage of those things. Does anybody have any questions up to this point, or start going into this next area? Any questions there on the moderators? Okay. So
Hold on one sec. I don't believe so at this point. Let me check Facebook. Keep going, and I'll interrupt you if it's something I see.
Yep. So I may go to a different screen share now, and let's go here to this. You see this, right? You see the new screen share?
Yes, you're good to go, Tim. All right, I'm sorry.
Okay, so as we get down south of Paducah, and we're back southwest there, and Longmont, and we're looking, and the first tornado warning comes out, and I'm just east of the bowl, and it's been producing baseballs back west, and we've got just a little landfall, first developing tornado back southwest. First tornado warning comes out, and catch maybe about a minute, 2 minutes of this thing going on. It's kind of high base. You can see it's fairly high. It's very clear back behind the storm. And this is going back to the west on the road, heading off to the east there, south of Paducah. So this little tornado is on the ground for, like I said, a couple minutes, stayed out in the rural areas, not a lot of houses or farms in this immediate vicinity. So it didn't do much damage, but it's very picturesque. And like I said, this lasted for a couple minutes. It was fairly decent, not too bad of those cells. But I knew after I saw that, and the storm was continuing to intensify, and it was moving into deeper moisture as well as better back surface winds, the tornado probabilities were going to increase, right? So I get out and we film this little thing. It kind of spins out in front of me here. I'm like, okay, fine. So I get this nice little RFE. You can see the inflow. This is inflow from the east going back to the west. Had really, really good inflow in this storm. So that was a big factor, right? So I decide to go ahead and go east back south of Paducah there. And I'm on Highway 1168, and I went past it, and I looked at my rearview mirror, and I saw this wall cloud really got its act together. And there's a big footprint over here on the right-hand side, producing baseball-sized hill up north there. So I said, you know what, I better get back west here, and that's what I did. So I turned around, went back west a couple of miles, and when I get here, I stopped at the intersection of basically the road south of Paducah and 1168 here. So I get it in this northeast corner here, and I go across the street, and I basically just set the camera up, and the wall cloud is getting more organized. It's getting better and better, and you're getting this big footprint inflow coming in. This whole bowl is rotating. The storm structure looks really, really good at this point, right? It's rotating, and if I just fast forward just a little bit here, so I end up, there's another chaser pulls up beside me, and we decide to go across the street. And I'm liking how this front edge is coming around. It's got nice, a really nice circulation now. It's starting to constrict. The bowl's starting to come in really nice. I've got dust on the backside going back south here. So I continue to sit here, and here in just a minute, I'll get my tripod. I've got the first developing tornado is developing now at this location. And I'm watching as this is tightening up, really tightening out, very tight circulation forming. And here's the beginning of the tornado just immediately west, northwest of the intersection here. Stayed here for a couple more minutes, taking pictures, taking video. Got Dave there, and he's over the side of the road, and this thing continues to slowly spin up and slowly spins up, and rotation is beginning to get a little bit better. And then we finally get a nice cone tornado come down just west of the intersection here as it continues. And You see the big up above us. You look at the big spiraling loft, and it's getting better organized. It's a small tornado right now, but it continues to grow in intensity. So at this point, we decided, hey, I'm going to bail, and it's getting too close here. It's about 100 yards away. So we decided to get in the car, and I'm going to turn and start heading east on Highway 1168. This is roughly about 10 miles south of Paducah. See the big delta with the drought ongoing in West Texas this year, in the last couple of years. It's very easy once you get the storms rotating, produce these dust plumes come up, and pretty easy to see the tornadoes as they pick up a lot of dry ground and head east. So I'm looking at the road structure here. I'm filming with my camera out the window here, just one last shot before it decides to travel down the road here. So go east here and go down 1168, and I stop again and I look back to the west. It's like, let's get another look at the same. So it's not quite as dramatic as it was, but still ongoing. The tornado, so it's a little bit lifted, but the overall structure is still there. It's kind of cycling as we continue to head east on 1168. There's 2 or 3 chasers on this road. One really heavily packed. Either I had to go up to Paducah or go way south and then back east about 15 or 20 miles south.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
I don't mean to interrupt. I don't mean to interrupt you. Whatever is showing is very small. I don't know if you can go bigger, but a few people on the panel on the Q&A saying it's kind of small.
Interesting. Okay, I'm full screen. I will tell you that on the Q&A on their apps, they need to make sure that they're full screen on the whole app, or on my share. On my share, I've got full screen on my share. What do you guys, Tim, and what Erik?
Okay.
What do you guys see?
Yeah, so that's what it is on your share screen. Go change the panel view. So go click on what you're trying to show.
Yep. That.
Because all I see right now is your thumbnails.
You don't see the whole screen?
I do now. There you go. That's what we need.
Sorry about that. Matter of fact, you want me to back up, or do you want me to go on?
Yeah, if you want to back up, we got plenty of time. I'm still trying to get Tim on.
Okay. So let's go back to where this thing just started here. So we'll start about right here. So just about 10 miles south of Paducah, we're watching the ball rotation continue to increase. You also notice right over here to the left, you'll see a little small funnel up in the air. So you got to watch some satellite tornadoes. You got the primary one here, but you got to watch this outer band as they rotate around. A lot of times these things will spin up, sideswipe you. You got to watch those little bitty vortexes as these things are starting to spin up. You got a lot of dust kicking up on this backside of the RFD, and you got the rotations tightening up here, and the RFD is cutting into this east wind, and finally we'll get a tornado vortex will form right here, right in front of us. And I'm watching these funnels. I'm pointing up to the left, and I'm watching these smaller funnels up aloft, and obviously we're going around the bow, the rotating bowl. And again, this thing is starting to form right in front of us here. But finally, eventually, we'll get a cone come down right in here. Again, it's probably the mid 80s with lower 20 dew points back to my west, and just to the east here, we're probably 85, 65 with the southeast wind. Do a little selfie picture real quick. Tornado ongoing. And I know one of my first tweets I put out to the Lubbock Weather Office is I'm at the intersection of 1168 and 10 miles south of Paducah. Tornado developing now at this intersection. And they're very, very fast with the tornado warnings this day. And both Norman and Lubbock and Amarillo were very, very good on top of the warnings process this day, and very well outlooked. And they were very situation aware with the mesoscale as well as the nowcasting and watching the live streams. There's a tornado in. Getting right past the intersection here. I'm getting to head east on Highway 1168, and just getting one shot here off to the east here real quick. And we're going to go down the road here just a little bit farther and then turn around and watch the progress of the tornado now. And that tornadoes continue to, not as dramatic as it was. It's cycling again, but the overall rotation is still there. It's you can see a little needle cone up the top, but the overall rotation is still ongoing, right? So that's what's happening with that. Let's do this, and let's jump to one of the things about going on 1168 turns into these oil field roads, right? And I'm really about 10 miles south of a paved road to my north, and about 10 to 15 miles north of the paved road south. So this is a cattle farm oil roads I'm going down. It's very dusty, very gravelly. But you got to look at the anvil coming off our storm lane at razor sharp anvil. And look, I'm heading basically due east down this dirt road gravel road, very heavy gravel. And of course, you got this big inflow as I'm traveling east. I know it's going to cycle. It cycled a couple of times. RFD, you see a couple people pull off there. And this is the vista. I mean, just hairpin turns, windy, curvy. It's very tough and chasing, to be honest with you. And this valley here, look at this. This went on for about 25 miles. And you could only drive about 20 to 30 miles an hour most of the times. You went any faster than that, and it would get very bad. Rotation is just to my left of the shoulder. Tornadoes ongoing. And I'll stop down here when I get a clear view back out of this rolling hills area, and I'll wait for it to come through this valley. And that's exactly what it's getting ready to do. And it's pretty amazing. So I'll get down here, we stop, and here's the development in the tornado. I'm pointing the car toward it. GoPro's going, and I get out of the car and I'm shooting as well. And now the tornado is going to firmly plant down on the ground. And it just starts off real small. You can see the dust, debris on the ground. And the tornado is a big cycle. It's kind of high base. So, we got good visibility here, right? So it's not really in the super deep moisture yet. It's still got a really great structure, but also got great visibility, right? You always want to have great visibility. This storm's coming off the dry line. It looks very high. Remember, we've got this 50, 60 knots, 500 coming out. And you've also got close to 100 knots at 200, 300 millibars coming out in the left front quadrant. So as the evening goes on, the conditions are going to get way more favorable for the storm. It's already tornadic, and it's going to move into an extremely favorable environment as it goes east-northeast here. And it's a very photogenic tornado. And this lasts for about a good 15 minutes here. And we'll go through the next one here. That gives you an idea of what that storm does. Really pretty tornado. Very, very, very pretty tornado. And we'll come on, and this is here's another scene just a minute or two later. Go down the road about a mile, and that's what it was doing. Big hollow shaped tornado on the ground. Got a lot of rapid rain around the tornado. It's a very photogenic, and this thing just keeps producing tornado after tornado. And this is a continuation of the tornado. And like I said, this was on the ground off and on for about 20 miles through here, all the way south of Paducah as it's making its way over toward move to the northeast. And then finally, as I get off to the east here, let's go over here to the east. There's another little clip. Yeah, there's another little clip of the tornado. And as again, it's just a very beautiful picture coming in the valley here. Again, it's just back roads, very pretty, right? So we'll go down these roads and continue to go east here. I think I'll stop one more time and try to grab a picture of it here, a little quick video before I get out of the way. And that was it on that. The next thing is I jump to the northeast. I get up toward Kroll and the wind farm area. And the reason I did is there's some time, once I got to the road, I got past the storm, got northeast because the roads here going over to Kroll and eventually up toward Vernon is a little bit more difficult as far as chase terrain and roads. The road, you do get a lot more roads. And so the tornado warnings kept talking. I missed a couple of tornadoes back southwest here. And you can see here's tornado on the ground here. Here comes the big rotating bowl now. And this is the inflow notch into the storm. This is going back to the west. And I'm going back. This road is following the inflow notch. You can see the big spiraling bowl. We got multiple tornadoes on the ground back to my southwest here. This is coming through the wind farm now. And you got some rotating dust. There's also some baseball, softball hail back on this northeast quadrant. It's wrapping around the circulation. It's back here. It's baseball hail. So I'm trying to stay out of the hail. I'm in this slot. So I'm actually in this inflow notch per se. And I'm watching these tornadoes back wrapping around my southwest, coming through the wind farm. I'm slowing down a lot here. A lot of things dramatically going on. You got a lot of you got some outflow going around the bowl. You got a tornado, nice little cone wedge going on here through the wind farm. And it's cycling on and off as we continue to watch the tornadoes, continue tornado warnings for this area. There was tornadoes back southwest here, about 5 miles. This thing's just a tornado machine, continues to crank out tornadoes. You can see more and more, and a little bit more RFD dust there, kicking up on the storm. And I decided, you know what? I've got that's kind of outflow to my south, but I've got this bowl forming here now, and this inflow notch here. What's this thing going to do? I've got big hill falling. Look at the clouds up here. They're racing back to the west. I got this new area now that's rapidly developing back to my west. I'm like, well, that looks interesting. What is that going to do? And but again, the hail core is not very far away, and the new tornado is going to come down in this area. So let's see what we got next here. So I continue to go look at this thing. I'm watching it. I'm watching for hail. And I'm like, you know, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to go east. This thing's getting pretty close to me. And then I turn back around here. And when I turn back around, I've got a couple of small tornadoes off to my right here. There's one right here off the right, slides the cone down. This is the old circulation. Is back off to my southeast a couple miles. This is the new bowl, and this thing is now coming down. Again, this area back southwest of Kroll, it produced a number of tornadoes. Some were significant, some were smaller. A lot of times they didn't last long, right? So about this time, I'm making my way northeast, and I decided to go ahead and pull up to where that tornado was that was developed in southwest. Just stop here on a little slide over, pull over, and just watch this tornado here for a couple minutes. It decided to plant right here in front of me and continue to watch it. And again, multiple tornado warnings in effect. The storm, you had to really be situation aware and watch behind you, in front of you, inside of you, 2 or 3 miles, because when inside of a tornado, they would come down and in multiple locations, and sometimes they were 3 to 5 miles apart, and the same general rotation. You'd have an old circulation, a new circulation back to the northwest, and it just kept cycling over and over again. So this went on for literally a good hour. Decided to go east, get out of the outflow, get out of the rainfall in that area. Next thing that's going to come up is we get from Kroll up to Vernon. I'm getting low on gas. I decided to head northeast on up into Vernon and grab gas. I'm watching the radar. The low-level jet's starting to ramp up. And as the low-level jet ramps up here at about 8 o'clock, the storm is starting to get way better structure. The culprit's exploding. And I decide, you know what, I'm going to go back west here and look at this thing. And it starts producing this big tornado south of Lockett. And this still frame here off my video capture off the Canon 5D. What you've got here, this is the RFD slot, clear slot. And this is a pitch black. And what this is the storm is eliminating the lightning. From right here over is this big wedge tornado. This is the big wedge. This is RFD cutting around the tornado. You can see the big RFD cutting around, and you can see the dust. I've got an east wind at about 50 miles an hour going into the tornado right here. This continues to track off to the slowly. It's moving east toward me. And if you look at the damage survey, and you got to remember at nighttime, a couple of chasers got in trouble here at Lockett, just north of me. Is at nighttime that low-level jet's ramping up, and a lot of times as the tornado's weakening in the cycle, a lot of times they'll take that hard left hook. We've seen this in a number of cases. Really, this year, about a dozen times that's happened. And you got to be really careful if you're north of the storm trying to do a hook slice, come through the storm. You got to be really careful because a lot of times these nighttime and early evening, these storms like to intensify. If they weaken, they'll hook hard left. And this is what this one went like this, and then went hard left. And I follow it north up this road here. And we have a little video here as I'm playing north. This is and you can see this is the tornado. It's just pounding lightning. I'm gonna back up just here a second so you can get a good look at the first part here. The tornado's off to my left. A lot of lightning come down. Lockett's in front of me. They're about 3 miles. And you can see the tornado continues, a big wedge. It's just on my left. So the reason I came in from the south, a lot of people up north, northwest, northeast of it, up in the rain and hail, and the tornado's coming up at you. I like the south approach at nighttime. Stay away from that rapid rain. You get a better visual. This was extremely visual from the southeast as it was heading up toward Lockett. And that's why I stayed south of the storm. And as the tornado continued to move up north toward Lockett, I had a good visual on it the entire time. And you see it wasn't raining. It did have RFD winds out of the southwest blowing about 40, 50 miles an hour here south of Lockett. There's the big wedge tornado heading up toward Lockett. And again, at nighttime, you got to be very, very careful. You can see the tornado. Tornado's actually shrinking. It was a very big wedge, and lucky for Lockett, even though it did a fair amount of damage. And Lockett there on the west side, it was in its shrinking at this time. It's more of a stovepipe tornado versus the wedge tornado when it was back southwest. And again, I'm about 3 miles south, and I'm a good distance south of Lockett. Watch it safely. I'm going on this dirt road. And I'm moving about 5 miles an hour. Luckily, there had been a lot of rain on this road. And look at the big, it's a big stovepipe tornado. There's no sense for me to go any farther. I basically stop here and just watch it continue to move north into Lockett and hit the city with the big power flashes. So I basically stop right here and just continue to watch for the next 5-10 minutes as it continues to move north, and then finally hits Lockett and then continues on up toward southern Oklahoma. I'm out of the RFD now, the debris field. Here comes the RFD around. But this is the May 4th event. It was interesting. It was pretty crazy as far as the stuff we saw that particular day. But it produced a damage in tornadoes for about a 65-mile path that was pretty interesting, right? It started back south of Paducah, but I think the combination of this day is a classic Texas panhandle chase where you have a diaphragm flow, you have a lot of jet energy coming out, you got a warm front lifting north up the Red River, backed winds. It's a classic Texas Red River Valley outbreak. And this produced a number of tornadoes, as well as the warm front in Oklahoma as it lifted north up south of I-4. There's a number of significant tornadoes in Oklahoma as well that day, large hail, baseball hail. Looks like we've got a number of questions here. You with me, Eric?
Hold on, Jeff. We got so many technical issues going right now on the other side. So,
Okay.
but we have a fix. We have a fix. So let me go to Q&A, and we'll do some Q&A with you. But what we're going to have to do, and I'm sorry to everybody, basically Zoom decided to do Zoom things, and Jeff, you're going to get a new link. Tim's going to get a new link, and everybody's going to get a new link. All right, everybody that's in Zoom here, we're going to be sending out a new link that will reset Zoom, and it will still be on Facebook. So we're not going to stop anything. We just have to reset the technology with a new link. And if anybody's working Zoom, you understand that. So we'll send it out on Facebook as well. We'll just go to that Zoom link and restart everything. But let me look at the Q&A first because we want to close your session out, or we can keep going. You can talk about some other technology stuff we talked about, Jeff.
Is audio good right now?
Yeah, audio sounds
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
The issue is I can't get Tim back in. So
okay, so let's talk about a little bit about technology for a minute. So here this week, there's a couple major things that have happened. Everybody knows I'm in the EV world. Electric, chasing electric is going to become a bigger deal going forward. We talked about that Chaser Summit last year, this year actually. And so the big announcement this week is we got SpaceX and T-Mobile were teamed up. And SpaceX, starting late next year, will be launching new satellites, lower orbit, up to 15 meters, about 45 feet dishes, and they'll cover a huge footprint of the U.S. and eventually global that will have a very strong signal, so you can do text as well as talk anywhere in the world. So you'll be able to take your phone, any phone. My understanding is any current phone will work today, and you'll have a service on T-Mobile is going to allow that service globally. So there's a lot of things going on in the industry in communications and satellite and mobile phone. I expect on the September 7th unveiling with Apple. This has been talked about now for about a year. A few of the details have leaked out in the last couple of weeks. And that is Apple and Globalstar are going to announce a partnership where the iPhone 14, 14 Max Pro is going to have satellite communications. Don't know the details yet, but I'd assume it's going to be similar, where if you don't have cell coverage, or if it sees you're not in cell coverage, you can either have, again, text, possibly audio, and we'll have to wait and find out if there's going to be video access as far as doing pictures, Twitter, those type of things, access, and what the bandwidth is. But they're going to have a partnership with Globalstar. That's going to be the big Apple announcement on September the 7th. There is a couple other major announcements forthcoming in the next 12 months. Can't talk about them, but I'll tell you the general consensus of what they're going to be. You're going to see a rapid intensification of both phone communications globally, so you don't have to worry about SIM cards, which country you're in. Also, you're going to see the satellite mobile and SpaceX. They have the RV version, they have the fixed version, they have the marine version now. It's about 5,000, hardware. It's up there about $5,000 a month for the data. So they're going to have a number of applications. Also, Tesla's going to have access. Tesla cars going to have access to the new T-Mobile access and satellites that are launching late next year. So you'll be able to text and take phone calls via Tesla. Also, you're going to see additional technologies coming out from SpaceX that will have go-in vehicles, so you can have possibly some kind of satellite communications continuously for text, voice, and possibly data and maybe video and the Tesla cars in the next 12, 24 months. I think you'll see additional announcements on those in the coming year or two. So there's a lot of great technology there going on. Watch the cameras, talk to the Canon people. I'm a Canon guy, talk to their people intently. There's several new Canon things coming down the pipe here soon. I think we're going to see some cameras with some global shutter, probably see some cameras with actually some 5G capabilities within the cameras. So there's a number of things coming technology-wise. It's going to be very nice and seamless for integration.
everybody, I would like to introduce Josh Morganman. He's actually the new star. I got to give him a shout out here. A new star of a show called Mission Hurricane, which is on Weather Spy, as his new show, which is a lot of people know him from from a previous show. I think Hurricane Man, is that correct? And so he's got a new show, and so we're making sure we let everybody know about that. Josh he spoke at last year's summit, and he's going to speak at the 2023 summit in February. He is well known in really is now, I could call him a colleague at Weather Nation TV, which is great to know, and great to hopefully get some canes in this year. And kind of a segue here into hurricanes from tornado talk. Of course, Josh, it sends me a text like, man, all you tornado guys are crazy. You got all these terms and all these ways to chase. So like I said, Tim, Jeff, if you guys want to interact here with him regards to this tornado season, or excuse me, non-hurricane season, not a tornado season, but I got a little excited. I heard thunder out the door here, so got a little storms, got a little distracted. So, anyways, Josh, if you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do and why you love hurricanes so much, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Thanks, Erik, and thanks to the conference for having me. I love coming on this one. I was actually listening with great interest to Tim and Jeff, and no, it doesn't sound totally crazy to me. It's funny how a lot of the things they say about chasing, they actually apply to what I do also. I mean, they're not completely different sports. There is a relationship. Even just random stuff like what Jeff said about having breakfast in the morning, I like totally, and in fact, I talked about this actually last at the conference earlier this year in Oklahoma City about how I think, I look at chasing, whether it's hurricanes or tornadoes or whatever you're into, as a sport, and like an athlete, you got to keep yourself kind of, mentally and physically, in shape to do your best work. And I really train to stay physically in shape, and I try to get enough sleep, and I try to force myself to eat, which I'm never hungry the week leading up to a chase. I just stop eating because I'm like, I don't know, I just get sort of like in hunting mode where, the adrenaline's pumping. But I've learned over the years that, okay, even if I'm not hungry, I've got to like eat in the morning before I chase and just stuff like that. I've got to get at least those 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and then I chase better. I do a better job. I'm more on it. I'm more willing to go that extra mile. And something that Tim pointed out about, hurricane landfalls, there is always that last second surprise. I think that people who don't chase hurricanes or don't specialize in it, they don't see it as a precision sport because they say, well, like a hurricane's really big and it moves slow. And so it's like, how do you miss it? Well, if you're trying to get the eye, and you're in Mexico and there isn't any radar, and it's the middle of the night. Actually, that's tough. That's hard to figure out. You're interpreting low res infrared images at 3 a.m. on the side of the road in Veracruz, and it's a tough sport, And folks always ask me, like 2 days before a hurricane, where are you gonna be for the landfall? I don't actually know 6 hours before. It's like if you're really trying to punch the middle of it, it's you're kind of refining down to the end. So there's just stuff that both guys were saying that was really resonating for me. Right now, this all feels very theoretical because I'm just kind of sitting at home in Bay St. Louis, looking at the computer models, like waiting for something to eat, so to speak. Definitely been a slow start to this season.
Yeah, I love Waffle House, by the way, Josh, and I like the fact that they're open. Usually the last one's open. I can get a hot meal even within 2 hours of the eye wall. So it's sometimes a very nice place to have breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or breakfast for lunch and for dinner.
Yeah, there's actually one near my house here, like in the neighboring town of Waveland, which I sometimes frequent a little more than I want to, because as you guys know, I try to eat healthy, but hey, sometimes you just want that food. So.
Yeah. So, well, I think I'm muted. Am I muted? No, I'm not muted. So what are your thoughts on this season? Like, it's been absolutely, granted, if you look at the scale, we're just starting to go up, but where we should be, but it's been odd. But to me, it's really the last couple of years is what's got everybody off, right?
Exactly. I was going to say that the memory of the media and even weather Twitter, even folks who should know better, their perceptions of things are very colored or are completely colored by the last 2 or 3 years. There's like, I feel like sort of weather Twitter has the memory of like a gnat. So, okay, the last few seasons were front loaded. There was a lot of stuff, in May, June, July, there's a lot of activity and into August. So folks have just gotten in their heads that that's, climatologically normal. What's normal is actually for things to be fairly dead until mid-August. So up until mid-August, that's what I was saying. It's like, it's not actually a slow season. It's just climatologically normal. Now, given that we're almost into September and we haven't had a named storm yet in August, it definitely is feeling like, okay, it's an officially slow start to the season. I don't know what's up with that, but it's really interesting. And another interesting thing, usually with the Atlantic and the Pacific, there's sort of an inverse relationship. If the Atlantic is nutty, the Pacific is a total funeral parlor, or vice versa. This year, what's really interesting is it's just kind of dead everywhere. The Western Pacific, which, produces all those, those monster typhoons, we see that as that's the world's sort of like engine for intense tropical cyclones, totally outdoes the Atlantic on average. The Pacific has just been dead the last few years. We've been busy in the Atlantic, but the Pacific's there's been nothing. I mean, there's been like 1 or 2 big super typhoons each year, but that's expected. But what's interesting this season so far is we're kind of dead everywhere. And I don't know what that is. Now, of course, there's some things now, at least to watch on the map. There's 2 things I'm looking at now. One is the disturbance that's currently kind of in the Northwest Caribbean, and the GFS is insistent that thing is going to become a hurricane in the Bay of Campeche and impact Mexico. I love chasing in Mexico. It's like I'm kind of like, it's one of my areas of specialty. I'm really into the history of it and all the the impacts there, and I'm well versed on both coasts, so I'm really watching that closely. Problem is the GFS is basically alone in suggesting that that's going to become a hurricane. So I don't know, take that with a grain of salt. And then of course the thing that everybody is talking about is Invest 91L, which is just way out in the kind of middle of the Atlantic. The National Hurricane Center now gives it a high probability for development. I'm going to just come out and say that my sort of like internal brain chip of like years and years of watching and chasing, I'm getting a fish vibe from it. Fish meaning I think it's going to stay out to sea. That's just the vibe I'm getting. When you look at the ensemble model runs, some of the members bring it into Florida, some curve it out to sea. To me, it just has a fish feeling. That doesn't mean folks shouldn't watch it and be alert. Of course, we should all watch it. You just don't know what's going to happen. And of course, over 10 days, things can really shift. The weather map is like a big Rubik's Cube. Stuff moves around. Suddenly that high to the north is a little stronger, and no, that thing's going into the Gulf. So we don't know, but my feeling is that I'd be interested to hear what Tim and Jeff think, but my feeling is I think it's going to be a miss in terms of the United States.
Yeah, I think so. A question for you, Jeff. Why do we even have GFS out to 10 days? Because 10 days ago, it was saying that this was going to be happening on the Louisiana coastline, some Cat 3, Cat 4.
Yeah.
And of course, now it's evaporated completely. It's like, what? And people send me these things. People send me, say, hey,
Yeah.
Tim, 10 days from now, you're going to go to Louisiana? And I'm, I think everybody should be fined in dollars, the number of hours of the model. So if it's a 256-hour run, you owe me $256 if you send me that. Okay.
It goes
All
into
right, I'm
Chaser
going to
Fund.
defend it. I'm going to defend it because as you know, folks know on Twitter, I'm a diehard like GFS junkie. Like no apologies about it. Okay. So here's my feelings about the GFS. Couple things. One is, I get lectured a lot, especially, by some of the 18-year-olds on Twitter who are like explaining to me that the GFS has no accuracy in the long range. And you really shouldn't look at it past, 5 days. Some of them say, here's the deal. I'm chasing around the globe. Okay. I'm chasing in East Asia. I'm chasing in Australia, this and that. And usually my very first inkling that I'm going to be getting on a plane and flying 7,000 miles away is the GFS. Now, it has a lot of false positives. It absolutely does, but it rarely has a false negative. So what it means is, if I'm staying on top of all the modeled storms on that, my first inkling is going to be the GFS. It's often going to be a false positive, but at least there's that alert in my head. Okay, there's something near Japan in 12 days. Maybe you got to look at that. So that's one reason why I find it very useful. But the other reason I'll say is I think that a lot of folks on, on Twitter, they, and I know you guys know this, but just for other folks who are watching, with the long range modeling, what is useful for me is not, okay, wow, there's going to be a hurricane hitting, Lake Charles. It's not that, but it's like, all right, in 10 days, in 12 days, in 14 days, the GFS is saying that this area is fertile, that, okay, there's going to be some kind of a cyclone in the Gulf. After multiple runs, it's kind of suggesting a trend for something, in that general area. That's how it's useful for me, not for the details, but just for the overall kind of the vibes it's giving. And I do use it past 12 days. And one last thing I'll say is, one of my greatest chases ever was modeled, perfectly modeled in the GFS way before 10 days. And that was Super Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, which actually more than 10 days out got the landfall location and timing right. Now you could say, okay, that's just like the broken clock being perfectly right, twice a day or whatever. But it's hard to forget that. And my good friend, James Reynolds, the British dude who lives in Japan, who chases typhoons, he and I talk about this all the time, how our first inkling about that legendary storm was the GFS long range.
Yep. I'm going to chime in about the current 12Z run. It's similar to what you're talking about, Josh. So I agree with you about the GFS and these fish storms. I think there's something we got to really pay attention to in the last 24 hours. There's some things going on where the 200 millibar and 300 millibar jet coming from Japan and Pacific Northwest starting to buckle. So the ridge, we're going to get a little bit of troughiness on the East Coast, but also at the same time as that lifts out later this week, then the Bermuda High actually starts retrograding and comes back southwest hard into Florida, into the Gulf, not too far where you live, Josh. In doing so, the brand new Euro and the brand new Icon model and the GEM model, as you bring a Cat 2, Cat 3 very close to the Bahamas, if not in the Bahamas, on days 8, 9, and 10, it collapses the steering currents. And when it does that, you've got a almost like Dorian 2 type situation where you've got a hurricane, possibly major. I'm going to say it right now. You're going to have a major hurricane very close to Bahamas or just east of Bahamas as we get into day 9 and 10. Then the high builds in solid, and then all of a sudden we're starting to see on the Euro that just came out this morning, it actually starts shoving it southwestward. The Icon takes it, stops it in strikes, and starts shoving it toward Miami days 11, 12, and 13. So if you look at the pattern, I think we're setting up for a dangerous period as we get into next weekend and the following weekend. We're going to have a stalling major hurricane near the Bahamas, and then as the high right now says it's locked in hard and it's going to start shoving it west southwestward, I think we're going to have a bad situation in about 10 to 12 days. That's my prediction today. I think
So Jeff, so that's really interesting. And I first of all, I just want to say I completely agree with the idea that we all just need to watch it closely because God knows what's going to happen. But it sounds like you're not getting a fish vibe from this. You think that there's a real threat to the United States?
I think if you look at all the models that have this storm coming out, okay, and I agree with you. In the past 2 days, 48 hours, 72 hours, they were developing it and taking it off to the northeast or stalling it and then heading to Bermuda, west of Bermuda, over Bermuda, east of Bermuda. But today's runs are farther southwest and they're stronger, and they're starting to see it. And all the models come, you can see it moving west northwest, then it stalls. And then on about 48 hours, and then it starts taking off back to the west again. Both the Euro caught that. Euro actually says it makes a hard southwest turn on day 9 and 10, and it's moving back down toward Nassau, or just northeast of Nassau, toward the northeast Bahamas. And I think that's an ominous sign. The models are giving us red flags to start watching. When 2 or 3 models are trying to 10 on that day 9 and 10, hey, I'm going to collapse and I'm going to start moving west after this point. I think that's a warning sign. We got to watch that trend as we get in days 9, 10, 11, 12. And that is starting to occur now. And I think that's a warning sign we got to watch.
I got a question. I got a court case in Miami on September 6th and 7th. So should I just write this down? Major hurricane hits Miami. I got to be in Miami.
No, I wouldn't say a city yet. I'm telling you, there's going to be probably a high likelihood of a major Bahamas on day 10. And that's what the morning's run showed. And more of the models are starting to say the same thing. So I think we got to pay attention, right?
And there's climatological precedent for that. You know, there have been hurricanes in the past that looked like they were taking sort of very fish-like tracks and then cut hard west or even west-southwest. And I'm thinking Ike in 2008 or Gene.
Andrew.
Andrew. Yeah, another great example. Gene in 2004. You know, there is precedent for like a ridge building back in and forcing something west after it looked like it was kind of flirting with the fish. So Jeff, I'm going to confess that I have not looked closely at the 12Zs. So of course, as soon as I get off this, I'm going to dig in.
You'll get excited.
Dig into
12Z is pretty scary.
What's that?
The 10-day on the Euro and this morning's models are very eye-opening. You got to really pay attention. Days 8,
I looked
9,
at the
10.
Euro operational. I mean, I noticed, you know, it just kind of explodes into a major and it's just kind of sitting there. You know, what concerns me about that is that the Euro at 10 days shows a major hurricane basically right near Great Abaco Island, which they deserve to not have a hurricane for the next 100 years because, of course,
I agree.
They're for it. But that was a direct hit from a 160 knot. I'm sorry, you guys are tornado guys, 185 mile an hour. So a little bit of hurricane snobbery there, but
yeah.
But, you know, they got a direct hit from a hurricane that devastated the de facto capital of Great Abaco Island, Marsh Harbor, which I think is going to take decades to come back. And man, they don't need another hurricane. And just that concerned me alone.
Yeah, let's keep this talk going. I mean, the Facebook's going kind of crazy right now with this talk. So, Josh, I'll just kind of lead into this, right? So, historical wise, the last 2 years have been crazy, right? Like,
yes,
I mean, I think the last 2 years we've 4 or 5 canes at least that were, you know, worth chasing, worth being there, and just seeing amazing sights. You know, we were talking about Mexico Beach here a couple of days ago, and some of the dangerous storms we've had. So, you guys want to talk about just some of the history that over the last 2 years is some of the canes, the most. I guess you rank them, right? Let's just do this. Rank your top ones to like, okay, that was a cool storm. If you could just the things that stand out over the last 2 years to you that have really caught storm and what everybody's been talking about is just the activity and whatnot. I'll let you guys take it from there.
Well, one thing I'll say is that I'll set the stage in terms of like historical. This has been a very unusual few years. You know, we have pretty good records in terms of landfalling hurricanes in the United States. We've got pretty good records going back to like 1851. That's when the National Hurricane Center's official database goes back to. And, you know, we don't have a lot of data about, you know, storms out to sea, but we do have pretty good data about landfalling storms. And when you compare the last few years to the last 170 years, this definitely is a big cluster. Now, is it unprecedented? Actually, no. If you look at the long-term history, what's interesting is there's just these incredible bursts where the U.S. just gets slammed again and again over several years, followed by real dead periods. And, you know, I became a hurricane nerd and started tracking this stuff, you know, in the early 80s. And man, that was a really lame time to start following hurricanes, because like 1981, 1982, 1983, except for Alicia, these were really dead seasons that I think that some of the young kind of hurricane nerds would just, if they look back, they would be shocked at how little activity there was. So this has definitely been unusual. What's been unusual has been all this sort of, you know, category 5 and 4 impacts in the United States in just a few years. You know, we went almost, I think, 20 years without a category 4. And then in 2017, we had a couple of category 4s in the United States. And if you include Puerto Rico, which is, of course, is part of the United States, but hurricane records, we tend to, like, the mainland US is kind of its own unit. But you know, in 2017, the U.S. had 3 category 4 landfalls after not having any category 4s for 20 years. Then in 2018, we had category 5 Michael. And then in 20, we had category 4 Laura in Louisiana, and then 21 category 4 Ida in Louisiana. That is an incredible string of high-end hurricane landfalls in the United States. So I just wanted to sort of, set that foundation and say that it's highly unusual. This has been a big burst. So with that, yeah, let's hear what do you guys, Tim and Jeff, what have been some of your highlights?
Well, my first hurricane that I actually was in was Allen back in 1980.
Wow.
Corpus
Wow.
Christi, and then we did the survey down at Port Mansfield down there. So that's my number one. And then of course I was in Alicia as well. And
Wow.
yeah. So, and then, multiple hurricanes throughout the 80s. There was Elena, and then Opal, and
Where
all
were you
that.
for Elena?
For Elena was the craziest chase I've ever been on, and I drove it. I drove from here
All along the Gulf Coast from
to
Florida to
Biloxi,
Mississippi. Yeah.
and I actually stayed in Biloxi. And
Oh, nice. You nailed it good.
well, no. Hear me out.
Okay.
I stayed in
Sorry.
Biloxi overnight on that first night, and then it was curving towards Cedar Key. So I drove from Biloxi to Cedar Key, which is it's a very long drive. And
Yeah.
I met this guy named John Coleman there. He was covering the storm for one, I think ABC or something there. And we chatted a bit about the whole Weather Channel thing, which is another story. And then I saw that the storm was going back to Biloxi. So I literally turned around and I drove all the way back. And I didn't get to Biloxi. I got towards Pensacola before I was too tired and I had to sleep. Because I literally didn't have any sleep. So I bunked in, and when I woke up the next morning, it already made landfall. And it was like, I had missed
right
it.
in Biloxi. Wow, that's a painful story.
It was a painful story. I missed it.
Wow. Did you take it hard? After a bust, I have major, one of the things that keeps me from busting is that the emotional fallout for me. I literally have like depression. I'm in bed for days, just like I can't get up. So that's a big incentive for me not to bust. It'll force me through. How did you feel after that? After you had been exactly where it made landfall and you got faked out. How did you feel about that?
Not too good, especially after seeing Jim Leonard's video, which has the beautiful cloudless eye and the stadium effect looking up. If you've ever seen Jim Leonard's video, it's to die for. I've been in several eyes in my day, but I've never had a clear eye except in Harvey. And that was, I could see stars, but that's at night. I mean, I'd like to do it in the daytime, Yep. So, and most of the hurricanes I've been in have been at night. So not much happens except from power flashes around because you're in total darkness. But, I'd like to be in one in the middle of the day. I missed Charlie as well, by the way. Talk about misses. I had figured Tampa was going to be hit, and Charlie was a little tiny hurricane, as you know, very compact, and it took a real right hook and went into Port Charlotte in that area. That's another miss. So I'm not too happy with that, And then I was in Francis and Hugo, and Hugo was fun, but again, it's at night. So, and I couldn't be in Andrew because I had to testify in a trial which happened to settle the very day, and I couldn't. It's like I should have been over there in South Florida. But again, Andrew was at night. So, there's and Harvey was at night, and Laura was at night, and Sandy was at night. So it's like, man, I'm getting all these nighttime hurricanes.
It's been like an unusual, and there people think that there's some kind of like reason for it, and there's none. It's totally random, but it does seem like a lot of the really big historic hurricanes in the United States over the last 20 years have all been at night. I mean, except for Ida, it just seems like they've just been one night impact after another. And one other random thing, I chase in the Philippines a lot by the way, if you're into like intense hurricanes, they're the world's capital. Of course, they call them typhoons there, but in the last 170 years, the U.S. has had 4 known instances of a Category 5 landfall. the Philippines on average gets a Category 5 impact once every 3 or 4 years. So
Wow.
this is the world's capital. Anyway, they're almost just the last, I've been chasing there a decade and they're almost always at night, except for Super Typhoon Haiyan. Almost every Philippines chase I've been on has been at night. I don't know why. Jeff, what about you?
Oh my gosh. I'm sitting here thinking about, well, obviously the Hurricane Michael down in Pensacola East there, just north of the base there, daytime landfall is over Mexico Beach, about an hour before it made landfall. I skirted the North Eye Wall. The water was just to the top of the wall, about ready to make that surge. The winds due out of the east. As soon as it started pivoting to about 100, 110, here comes the water. So I made it back past the base as the roof and the buildings were coming apart.
Wow.
I made it over the bridge in the nick of time. And stopped at Walgreens on the south side there, and just over the bridge, and watching Hurricane Michael coming. A lot of people don't understand. You guys do. You start getting those Cat 4, Cat 5s, even if you're not on the water and near the water, your visibility is down to sometimes 50 yards, 100 yards. Hurricane Michael, that lasts 2 or 3 hours. As that Cat 5 winds are coming in, 120 gusts to 140, 150 gusts coming in that northwest eye wall. You're zero visibility. The airs are popping. You see power and flashes. It's everything screaming. You got torpedo, missile debris in the air, 20, 30 feet off the ground. I'm seeing telephones breaking. They're going horizontally like torpedoes. The roofs across the street from me at the houses, the neighborhood, I saw like 10 roofs come off at the same time and disappear into the rain fog as the North Eye Wall's coming in. And then just got into clear skies for a short 5-10 minutes. And the most awe-inspiring is watching the stadium effect at about 2 or 3 o'clock. And while I'm watching the clear skies here, I can literally look back west of my location about 1.5 miles. And Tim, the only way to describe it was like a black fog on the ground, and the black wall was moving south at 140, and I could see flying debris to my west, 1.5 miles. You could hear it. You hear ding, ding, ding. It's just like, 20-mile winds was that, somewhat calm, and watching that stadium effect. And then I could see the back wall coming back at me. And of course, there's millions of pieces of debris. The roofs off, the Walgreens. I got a shopping center collapsed near me. And so here comes this back west wall, and you're getting ready for repositioning. And it was scary. I mean, Hurricane Michael was.
Where was that again? Where was it again, Jeff? What
just
location?
on the east side of Pensacola, just northeast of the Air Force Base, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Or do you mean Panama City?
Yeah, just east of there. Yes. Yeah, just east of Panama City.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was gonna say if
east
you were
side
in
of Panama City.
Pensacola, you missed it, but I think you meant
Yeah, you're right.
Panama.
I was Panama City. Apologize.
I was like,
east
huh?
side of Panama, Callaway. Is it Callaway?
Oh yeah, I was
So,
in Callaway also, and I witnessed exactly what you said about we had basically 12 minutes of calm, and then we just came rolling back in.
that was crazy.
You hit a point that when you're in the core of a really, really intense hurricane, that whiteout thing, and the most incredible example of it that I've ever seen was in Dorian in Marsh Harbor, which was a high-end Category 5. There was a 6 that would have been a 6, but that one was, it was sort of my life's dream to be in a high-end Category 5 on an island with no land friction in the middle of the day and experience like that. And then when I was in it, it was almost disappointing because what I realized is you can't see anything. You look at my video, and when we're deep in that eye wall, it's like I might as well have been shooting like a shower curtain. There was just nothing to see. It was just, everything was white. Yeah. And what was interesting was all the crazy destruction, like the cars outside the window blowing away and all the crazy stuff that happened. It was like that happened behind this white curtain. So it was like, it looked kind of crazy. This white curtain came down. You couldn't see anything for an hour. And then when it lifted, the cars were all thrown around the parking lot, but you never saw any of them move. It was all behind that whiteout. And it's scary because it looks sort of like a blizzard, it just almost looks, there's almost looks soft, but it's, as you said, there's crazy flying debris and that stuff that'll, take your head off in 1 second. That's why those high-end hurricanes, I've been in 61 hurricane eye walls all around the world. I'm still here. I still have all my limbs. I feel, I kind of obviously lead a sort of a daredevil lifestyle, but I do try to take some calculated risks. And I feel like I've tried to sort of take reasonable risks. And I think that, my rule about 4s and 5s, kind of trying to ride out the core in a fixed kind of building, I think is paid off for me. Don't want to tell anyone else what to do, but that's kind of been always my rule.
Yeah, we look for those substantial structures. Tim and I know from construction and building trades that first thing I'm doing, I did a Hurricane Michael, a lot of the big ones. You look for those, 4-inch parking garages, solid steel, newly built, new I'm looking for those superstructures, right? Or I'm inside of a firewall. If it's a hotel, it's got to be a superstructure. Even if I know I'm going to get a 10-foot storm surge, I'm going to be in those. We did it for Hurricane Laura in downtown parking garage, right? Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, in Katrina, I was in a 5-story parking garage at the top in Slidell, and that was great because you were up above everything. And the same, Jeff, and when Hurricane Laura hit, 5-story parking garage at St. Patrick's Hospital there, again, you're above everything. So you feel the full brunt of the wind when you're up there.
Oh, yeah.
And I enjoyed that, though, and you feel safe in case, you're above the storm surge, away from the water. That's wave action. And then if things get hairy, you just go down a level. That's all. So,
what's first in there in Hurricane Laura downtown is the eyewall was coming in. The air conditioners flew off the roof. I saw 20 or 30 of them back to my northeast. Yeah, I think of the wind direction. Yeah, I was looking back northeast, and about 1 floor below my top level, I saw those 40 air conditioners. I told the chasers on the roof, I said, guys, when the winds come out of the northeast, as it's coming up, all those deals are going to come flying back southwest toward that big glass building. And they said, it's not where you're in here. And for my building days,
your surroundings.
Right, what's around you? Am I going to have a building collapse that's like a block over because it's built 40 years ago, it's not up to date standards? You're looking for those missile debris that's going to come at you, depending on which way that wind's coming. So that's constantly going through your mind. Hurricane Laura is a great example of that, right? And watching those feeder bands come up and actually seeing the little tornado vortexes back southwest, rotate northwest at 75 miles an hour, and watch them actually hit, but go over the radar site and take out the radar site there, and watching it happen in real time was unbelievable. And fill up 15 minutes later as that wind impact hits you, right? You know what's going to happen. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And technology continues to get better and better with the satellite, the wave heights, the buoy data. We've got incredible data now. I mean, to think we used to have the big computers and everything, and as Josh will like to everybody on this call, the phone and the pad now, and now with global coverage and talking about Starlink and you got iPhone with their big announcement September 7th with Global Star. You're going to see more and more where we can go anywhere in the world with a phone and have communications and possibly video anywhere in the world, right? It's going to unleash us to go anywhere, right? And we're going to do that. So there's some exciting technology coming in at the perfect time. So forecasting, and I think, and I'm a true believer of this. I've done this for 50 years in Chase, and people know that. I think there's a best way to get the people to move and evacuate and to take and heed those warnings is to show them pictures, show them the real-time information of what's coming, because there's nothing better than watching a video of the water already going into buildings. And if you're up the coast and the hurricane's going to hit you, you got to evacuate, right? You got to take those warnings. And one of the problems we're going to have this year, nobody's talked about it yet on this call, and that is because we've had millions of people move to the south, not only in Texas, but also Florida, and along the coastline over the last 2 or 3 years during the pandemic. We've got a whole new generation of people by the millions that are down in those high-risk zones now that have either got to evacuate or put in place. And so you've like tripled the evacuation time is a big problem for Florida. They're already talking about it behind closed doors. It's going to be a big problem if we have a mass evacuation in the southeast this year with a big major hurricane, potentially, if that happens this year, right? So those are things we got to be thinking about.
Most people have never experienced a hurricane.
Right.
Most people don't even know their elevation, their building elevation. So it's like, you don't even know how high you are. And then a lot of people don't have the preparations. They figure, well, I've got enough food to last me 2 or 3 days. Well, the power is going to be out for weeks or maybe even months. And why would you want to stay there? I wouldn't want to stay there. There's a disaster that happens after the disaster. And that's all the power going out. And a lot of people like to rough it. I'm not one to rough it. I remember the good old days when you didn't have air conditioning and it was 80%, 90% humidity at night, and try to sleep. Just try to sleep, in a hot, humid house. You just can't do it. So I think that's where the people just don't want to deal with evacuation. They just say, well, we're going to tough it out. It's such a hassle evacuating. Well, it's even more of a hassle if you don't evacuate, in my opinion.
Right, right. That's right. Yeah, the aftermath after the, my guys, we can all name all of them: Andrew, Katrina, Charlie, Francis, Gene, Ivan, Ike. All these monster hurricanes and the millions of people they put out a commission. You get the power outage. One thing in a tornado, Tim and Josh, we have a tornado damage in an area. I can drive a lot of times a mile away, half a mile away. I've got dinner. I've got utilities. I've got here's something else to talk about: a credit card to go get cash out. Right, yeah. Cash is paramount. Let me tell you a little secret, and you guys know this secret. Cash is king. That's all I'm gonna say. If a hurricane's coming, you better get you a couple $1,000s. If you have it, you better have it in your hands. Take pictures, and Tim you can validate what I'm about to tell you. The most valuable thing you can do if you live along the coastline is take pictures and video inside your property and outside your property before the hurricane hits your location, because that is going to be critical when you go to adjust with the insurance company what you had. Because people at times they'll buy a new bedroom suite, or they put as Josh is doing, he's building a new house down in Florida, right, or down in Louisiana. So what happens is you build things and you add things onto your house. Buy a new car, you have insurance, but a lot of times we buy things we don't get insurance for. You got to prove that you had it, right? So I always tell people that take pictures of inside your property, your video, keep it in a safe place, and what it was a couple days before the evacuation, right? Which is really important for later. But those kind of things are paramount, are critical. Your medicines, your gas money, evacuation route, family, friends in another state. Be talking to them. You're going to be friends with your in-laws, right? Possibly for a couple of weeks. So those are kind of things I think people need to think about.
Regarding aftermath, I mean, that's, I think, a big difference between hurricane chasing and tornado chasing is that especially when you're not in the United States, being, and let's say you're on an island, either in the Philippines or in the Bahamas, maybe in a developing country, or on the tip of the Baja California Peninsula in Mexico. But when you get a very big hurricane impact, it's almost like the adventure is just starting once the hurricane passes, because I've been in the Philippines, in Mexico, and in the Bahamas. I've been trapped for days at these locations, living off of my kind of ration supplies. After Dorian in the Bahamas, I was living in my car for a few days. Literally living in my car. That was what there was. And so one, it underlines Jeff's point about, having cash and also just supplies ready, because, a hurricane devastates a large region. It's not just like a narrow track. And then also, again, I want to bring up the physical fitness thing. I think it's really important. If you're stuck in these really kind of arduous situations for days, physical fitness will help you get through that in one piece and potentially go without food for a few days. So.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell you this year, just based on the past several years, even if I'm chasing a hurricane in the southeast or in the United States this year, or remotely on an island, I'm bringing my own provisions. I actually got some ration food, some MREs here a couple months back, long-term storage, and I have a couple of trunk cases we ordered online from Patriot. And I'll bring in my own, believe it or not, I'll bring my own way to have water, my own food, my own power. And then once we get on site, gas and food and that. So I'm going to be self-contained. So if everything gets hit and everything gets taken out, I can stay on the ground for a week and I've got everything with me. It's critical. It's critical to have everything with you in these kind of big hurricane events.
And I encourage, guys who are, or gals, sorry, who are going after the big game, the big hurricanes, especially outside the United States, to just really, I used to hate being stuck in aftermath zones after a hurricane. And now my attitude is, that's just part of the chase. That is part of the experience, and just accept it. That is just, you want to hunt these big storms. There's that is part of it. It comes with it. If you're not cool with it, don't do it.
Yep. It's probably a good idea to have an MRSAT phone or a phone that you can communicate off the island, right, Josh? I mean, that's critical, right? When all the other communications
about
fail.
Stuff like that. And then, after Dorian, I was presumed dead. I didn't realize that I was considered dead until I got back to civilization and saw on Twitter that I had died. And a sat phone, of course, could have prevented those rumors.
Right. Yeah. Same thing during Hurricane Harvey, right? Everybody thought the car wash had collapsed on me. Now it was game over. But it's even with communications, it's paramount. You have multiple communications to reach people aftermath, right? Or loved ones, right? and people that watch after us every day.
Yeah, it's something something I got to bring up that happened to me. I chased Hurricane Irma on St. Thomas. St. Thomas is a U.S. territory, but it's not a U.S. state. So there's some differences there. Same federal laws, but the state laws are different. And when they put in their lockdown, it was locked down. I mean, not just the National Guard, but the police, they had it locked down. Well, once the hurricane come through, people got out and about. Well, also the just like anywhere else, kind of like what happened with Katrina, we had a lot of people out in the area not doing the correct things, stealing stuff, breaking into people's stuff. We got stuck on the island for 2 weeks. I mean, we were on St. Thomas. It took out the air traffic control tower on St. Thomas. They couldn't land aircraft until the Marines landed and did air traffic control to be able to land aircraft. So think about that. 2 weeks on an island, food was running scarce. The security situation was going away very quickly. And myself and Cody Howard, we walked out of a bar because it was the only thing available, food and water wise. There was a bar there. Had some drinks, relaxed, and headed back to the hotel. We walk out, we hear gunshots behind us, and the bar gets robbed. That's how close it was. So you got to think about these security situations going on in these islands. I mean, you're not, with me, I can legally carry a weapon because I'm a cop. So but I can't do that in other countries. So your security situations in these, that's where my mind goes.
Yeah.
When I chase, I'm more worried about that than I am the storm half the time. Of the aftermath and what happens. And Katrina, it can happen on the mainland. You just never know. And putting yourself in positions, picking that hotel or picking that location, it may think in a storm wise, it may be the perfect location, but after the storm, like Josh and Jeff and Tim's talked about, it's the whole picture, right? It's getting back to your family afterwards that you still got to think about. And that's kind of my focus, right? With what we're doing at the Chaser Summit, which is kind of the holicity of safety within chasing. St. Thomas was great, but the only way I got off that island was with my military ID, and I took a C-17 off. I would have been there another 2 weeks. It took them a month for a cruise ship to get everybody off that island.
Wow.
And so, and that was 180-mile-an-hour wind sustained. We took the South Eye Wall of that, on St. Thomas, and it's still not fully recovered.
In Hurricane Rita, we were watching from the parking garage in Beaumont, looting going on during the eye. During the eye, it's a calm period where people feel it's under the cover of darkness. Of course, none of the authorities are out during the hurricane, right? So the eye is the perfect time to go out and loot. And I don't know how many times you guys have been kind of accosted, but I myself carry all kinds of stuff in the back of my truck, fuel, coolers of food. I've had people come up to me asking me for fuel, asking me for food, and I have shunted them away. But if somebody was really adamant about getting that, they could. And it's like, I've been fortunate so far not to have had that experience, but people do see you as a target.
Yeah. Good point, Tim and Josh and Eric. One of the things that social science tells us, and we've all experienced this, is about the human capacity for despair after disaster, whether it be a tornado or a hurricane. When the realization that there's no food or water, there's no gas, there's no banks open, there's nobody open to get food and water, you're not moving anywhere, your car's incapacitated as far as moving. About 48 hours, 72 hours, people despair sets in. And once you get that 48, 72-hour window, people start going into survival mode, and they start looking for anything and whatever they can find, they're going to get at whatever they got to do, whether it's breaking in stores, whether it's stealing from people, robbing people. So once you get past that 48, 72 hour, the despair level goes up enormously. And that's why I try to, in that window, if it's a mega disaster, I know it's widespread and we're in a bad situation, after about 48, 72 hours, I want to evacuate that area as quickly as possible, because things get really desperate after that time period for everybody, right? And it seems like there's lawlessness. Erik can talk about this. It seems like society seems to break down. That it's kind of everybody for themselves, right? It's like the stores are all broke down, the roofs are off buildings. Here's all this merchandise, and people feel like it's their right to go and take things, right? And I know people have got to eat and provide for their families during these big disasters, but I've witnessed it all. Katrina, I saw people taking literally a 580 case bulldozer, front end loader, and tear the front of a electronics store down, their whole front door, and literally stealing all the electronics out of it day after Katrina and down in New Orleans. So those kind of things are going to happen, right? But that's my word, is at 48, 72 hour, things get really crazy and things start getting really nuts. So we got to think about that, right, for safety.
Yeah, that's in the long term of things of chasing, right? And this is where I think I have a weird thing. Like, I'm in the media, but I'm also a cop. So like I do both. But as a cop, put on my cop brain, we got a lot of young chasers out there that are going to get into areas that may not be ready. And that's part what I worry about, and why I kind of push the safety issues, is because I see it, right? When I'm out there in a hurricane and they're in a not sturdy 2-story Motel 6, and they're bragging about roofs coming down on their head, and they don't think about the big picture of the safety people that have to come in there and rescue them and putting themselves in that situation. And so,
Yeah.
It's one of those things there. It's more of an education thing to me than it is a, hero complex or whatnot. But I could tell you from a emergency perspective that just because you're a chaser nowadays, there's a lot of places, especially in Texas and Oklahoma, just because you're a chaser, they don't want you around, especially in these evacuated areas. You're going to really have to have some good credentials. I mean, like, Tim's not going to have a problem. Jeff's not going to have a problem because, you're properly credentialed. So, to our audience that we're speaking to, you got to think about stuff like that. Think about what has to happen after these storms. You've got to go in and rescue these people that decided to make these wrong decisions and unexperienced, and are stayed home in an evacuation area where, you're going to have a 25-foot surge and they live at 10 foot. It's like, stuff like that. As chasers, I feel like we need to message that better.
Police are people too, and they have their houses ripped up, torn up. I've encountered a couple that were definitely out of line, and they told me they were going to arrest me, even though I have media pass and I have signs on my truck saying who I am. I was just sitting in a parking lot at a shopping center, and I was just sitting there. And so you're going to encounter some of that, but you have to understand that they're people too. And, I just don't want to be involved in anything like that. I'd like to be the stealth chaser, the quiet chaser, the one that doesn't, I'd like to get in, do my thing and get out of there. If I don't have to interact with very many people, except maybe other chasers, then that's it.
Tim, I've always been, I know there's two styles of chasing. I know there are a lot of guys who have like the sort of the tricked out cars with all the branding and this and that, and they kind of want that on the road interaction. I'm an admitted media whore, but when it comes to, actually like on the ground, I just kind of I'm all about staying under the radar and just not interacting. Also, because when I'm chasing, it's almost like I'm playing a tennis match where I'm running. I'm very focused. I'm in the zone, and any human interaction is it's almost like a distraction for me. So I'm trying to constantly just not kind of have those interactions. Erik brought up a good point, which I wanted to say, which is about, I think that the number one sin that you could commit as a chaser is putting yourself in a situation where you require local services to rescue you or whatever. Like that's at all costs, avoid that. Don't become part of the burden during a crisis. And I thank God I've always been in a position to help rescue others rather than to be rescued. But it is my biggest, it's the thing I think most about is, okay, just don't make myself a burden. And that means not putting myself into situations where, I could, miscalculate and end up, in kind of a precarious situation. Now, of course, this is a game of risk, and there's the only way to be totally safe is just to stay home and not chase. So it's a matter of kind of, it's like playing the percentages and what seems kind of logical and safe. I've had one last thing I want to say about this topic. I remember when I was young and starting out chasing, and I did some daredevil-y dumb things. And I remember like, getting like some of the older veterans, like, kind of dissing me for taking dumb chances or being too aggressive. And I remember when I was at that time, I remember thinking, okay, I when I become a veteran, I'm not going to be that way. I'm not going to become that like grouchy old guy. It was like really important to me. But what's happened is now that I am kind of more of like a veteran chaser, it almost keeps me. I think that sometimes I stay quiet. I see some of the younger guys doing crazy stuff, and I don't say anything because I don't want to be that grouchy, kind of veteran chaser. And maybe I should, like, I mean, Erik sort of talked about this as being education, so it's not scolding, but it's like, okay, helping some of the less experienced chasers to kind of understand the risks is maybe the way I should look at it.
Yeah, I think it's important though that you let other chasers know that you're in the area in case something bad happens. I have been stuck on a number of occasions in ditches and in sand, and I ran out of gas once, and thank goodness there were other chasers around that I could call on to help me out. Now, we don't want to ever get stuck in a ditch or run out of gas, but it happens. Okay. So it's good to know other chasers that are going. It's always good to see Jeff Pietrowski out there and Scott Peak and people that if something, that they're there in the area, at least that if something happens, at least you can crawl in or depend on them.
One of the things I'll bring up, Erik, that I've found extremely valuable that I've been doing more of, I've been open about this, very open. People see it near my live streams. At times, I find it, especially if I'm going to a new area. I may be down in Florida or Louisiana or Texas a number of times. During this Hurricane Harvey, I go find the local emergency management director, the police chief, and I'll try to have a little 5-minute interaction with it. They have time with me. This is a couple of days for the hurricane. I say, hey, if it comes here, what's below area? It's going to for sure go into water. What is your place where everybody's going to run to, including the police? Where are you guys going to go hunker down at? Which building, which thing is going to be safe, not blow away? And I found that extremely valuable, and it's helped me out during Harvey. It's helped me out during several of the big hurricanes, and Hurricane Michael the same way. So finding those places that are kind of the area. And here's another thing that nobody talks about. And Erik, this is, I'll go right down your alley here. One of the things we never talk about, but I've come across this. We all know we've come across this in tornado damage and hurricane damage. There was always a good area of town, an okay part of town, and a bad area of town. And I personally have encountered a couple of situations, both in tornadoes and hurricanes, where you think you don't know the area, right? You just know you're in this part of the town and this area's got damage. Well, you get your camera out, or if you stop in a rough part of town after disaster, whether it be a tornado or a hurricane, and you bring your camera out, if that area of town happens to be in the drug area town, they're not going to look at you very friendly. And matter of fact, most of them are going to look at you as a threat, and bad things happen, right? So you got to be situation aware of what part of the city am I in. And I probably don't want to be in that area if things are going to come apart and things are going to come unraveled, right? That's not an area you want to be in. And that's the first thing I ask when I go to an island, when I go to a city, whether it's a big city or a small city, I say, what area do I need to make sure I stay away from? They go, don't go north of this street, right? If you do, you're in trouble. So that's one of my first things I do when I go in before any chase, especially hurricane chases, right? Because it's a vast area. I ask that local emergency manager, that local police chief, what area am I safe in? What area am I okay to film at night and I'm not going to get robbed, right? I make a habit of that. I don't publicize it often, but I do every chase.
Another thing that hurricanes, another thing that differs from tornado chasing, I always look at the topography. There's topozone.com. I look at the topography maps. That's how I was able to get in on Harvey. Keeping over 20 feet was because I watched where the 20-foot contour line was, where I was at. And then FEMA has some inundation maps that are really good, so that I can keep out, like for Pass Christian, for example. There's higher places there, right there on the beachfront, but you have to know where those higher places are. I mean, there's a lot of low areas, and then you also need to go. There you go. There's another. Yeah. So this little app right here is a couple bucks called Pro Tip,
Pro Map Tools, and it has a place for elevation finder. I use this religiously where I'm at. It's showing my GPS location. It shows it in meters or in feet. And I use that, and literally as I go down the coast, I watch it, and I put the icons down, and I'm like, wow. The good example is Louisiana. I'm chasing Hurricane Laurel, and we're looking at these escape roads, 2 roads, they're 60 miles apart, north south. And I'm looking, I'm like, ooh, the water's going to come on the backs of this bay. Here's a water inlet. This road's going to go into water when it gets to 9 foot. I've got a 20-foot storm surge coming on the backside. It's going to sweep around the backside. The back inlet's going to fill up way before the coast even floods, right? So my escape route's going to be trapped off. So these are the kind of things Josh and all of us are doing to find out where am I safe, where am I not safe. And a little interesting story. I was down at Tampa Bay here recently, and we all know the story. If a big hurricane Cat 3, 4, 5 goes either near or just to the north of Tampa Bay, the backside of Tampa Bay and downtown is going to flood. And I was looking at a condominium apartment complex, just looking at it for multiple reasons. And that particular agent selling that property, they were clearly in a flood zone, and they're going to be under 20 foot of water. She goes, oh, we're not going to flood here at all during a big hurricane. And I said, really? Can you show me your map? She goes, well, I don't have a map. So my point is, you got to do your own research when you go to these areas and think about these back bays, back streams. But yeah, having the elevation is critical when you travel. It's paramount. I don't travel anywhere without it.
Josh, do you do anything in particular?
Yeah, I mean, elevation is key, and it's everything. And it's why I really I have to say, I hate chasing in Louisiana. I love the state of Louisiana. And actually I'm building in Mississippi. Mississippi is where I live, but right near the Louisiana state line. I mean, Louisiana is one of my favorite states culturally and all kinds of other reasons. It is my absolute bottom of the barrel for chasing hurricanes, because the whole southern half of the state is at like 1.3 feet above sea level, and you could be 30 miles inland and you're not quite sure if you're safe or not. It's all about elevation, obviously. So I found Louisiana very, very challenging. I mean, coastal Mississippi is to some degree, but not to the level that Louisiana is. So yeah, It's something that definitely sticks in my mind quite a bit. I will say this, there's always those last minute changes. There's always this, I have this idea of how to chase, which is more theoretical, which is, okay, I'm going to scout these locations and, assess the structural integrity of the building, which of course I'm not really qualified to do. I'm not, not like Tim is, but there's all these things that I want to do. And at the end of the day, so many of my chases are, and again, I want to bring up some of the foreign chases. It's just, at the end of the day, I'm just sliding into home plate at the end. And Hurricane Patricia in Mexico, Category 5 coming in. And, it actually weakened before it actually weakened to a high end Category 4. But as it was coming in, I was going up and down the coast trying to figure out where to go using visible satellite imagery, by the way, because there's no radar, and it was a pinhole eye. I did get in the eye, but that chase brought me to just some little tiny town, and the hotel that I found was not built well, and but it was what it was. That was where the chase took me at the end of the day. It didn't check all the boxes of safety and everything else, but it was about getting in that eye at all costs, I guess, and fortunately I survived it, but you just never know. But I think back to the main point though, elevation is key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, guys. You guys have been amazing, all three y'all. Brandon, of course, he had that last minute cancellation, and I completely understand. Your job comes first. So we have a few things. If you guys want to have just a couple of closing comments about whatever you want, and then we're going to transition here into closing and talk about a little bit about what we're going to do in February, and then we're going to let everybody get to the rest of their Sunday and enjoy the rest of their Sunday evening. So go ahead, whoever wants to start first.
Well, from the tornado chasing perspective, I'm going to keep at it as long as I can, but just beware of those little subtle features out in West Texas with those boundaries. And, that Morton, Texas now, obviously hindsight's 2020, but had I known now what I know, I would have been a little more gung ho about chasing that event there. And then with hurricane chasing, I can't chase every hurricane. I have a real job and I've got to work on that, and I've got commitments that take me there. So, it hurts to miss Michael and it hurts to miss Andrew, because those are such phenomenal hurricanes. But other than that, when I can, I will try to continue to chase in the US. I just I'm older, obviously, and have some medical things going on. So I can't just jump over. One of the things that happened in Ike that was a real scare was I went to the San Luis Hotel there, and I was camped out there. And all of a sudden I started having some heart issues, atrial fibrillation.
Wow.
And I didn't have my medicine with me.
Ooh.
I had unfortunately left it at home. So it was like, talk about, trying to not be a person for first responders there.
Wow.
Fortunately, I converted back, but it was like I had a real scare there in Ike, and now I bring medicine with me, of course. But it's like it's something that you just got to be really cautious of, and it's a totally different kind of chasing than tornado chasing. So much more involved with it, and so much. I think it's a higher level of anxiety and even anticipation, because half of the chase is not going through it. It's getting out back home safely, and that can be a real. I had 10 options of fleeing Katrina, and all of them were either blocked or flooded, and so I was stuck in Slidell until the water went down, and until locals came out with chainsaws. And the same thing happened in Ivan with Pensacola. I was in Warrington, and I had to wait until locals came out with chainsaws to cut the road I was fleeing on. And Ike was a big sweat too, because it flooded, 45 sweated, and boats from the marina came across. Fortunately, they had a concrete median, and only the inbound was blocked of boats, and I was able to get out there. So getting out can be just as full of anxiety as trying to get into the chase area.
Yep.
Jeff?
Boy. Yeah. So tornado season has been awesome. It's treated us both, me and Tim, well over the last 40, 50 years. Lots of tornadoes, lots of memories. I wouldn't change anything. Hurricanes, I love hurricanes for different reasons. Yeah, it's incredible. And speaking of medicines and things, I think getting out is just as important as getting in. And you're right, Tim. It's harrowing getting out of these hurricanes. I mean, it's very challenging at times. I can't go into details. I just can't for obvious reasons. But you'll understand. You'll read between the lines here. I have had the opportunity occasionally from somebody from military side of the house reach out to me in different positions. In different situations we've all been in, and said, if you need help, this is who you call, right? So I have those contacts. So you can't have enough friends when it's coming to hurricanes on islands or U.S. Mainland. You've got a lot of people. You don't, in this business, you don't know how many people are watching you, watching your updates from everyday people to the military to everybody's watching in between, right? The media's watching, everybody's watching. So having those people and watching your backside is really critical at the end of the day. Especially if you need help getting in or out, is paramount. It's very important. I enjoyed, thank you for inviting me today, Eric, and the panel. This is awesome. And look forward to ChaserCon coming up here next year. It's going to be a great show. We really look forward to it.
Yeah, I got to correct Jeff. I can't use the word ChaserCon.
Sorry about that. That's my mistake.
Chaser Summit.
Chaser Summit. Yeah, forget the con. It's Summit. I got it.
We're not cons anyways.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't want to make anybody mad by using that name. So,
no mistake.
So, it's an honest mistake. So sorry, I'm distracted because they just upgraded the launch status weather conditions to 90% for in the morning. So,
That's great.
I think I'm going to jump on an airplane and head to Florida. So I think I'm going to go watch that. So, with 200 other thousand people going to be there, but so anyways, Josh, you want to have final say so here?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's always fun I feel like, when I come in, when I'm with this conference, I feel like I'm the kind of weird hurricane guy, just kind of like wandering into the rival gangs territory. But I know it's nice to be here. And yeah, no, I am an unabashed sort of, hurricane specialist. I don't do anything else. I'm just a hurricane guy. So what it means is, unlike a lot of you guys, I don't chase all year. I've got a season where I'm going, or, a couple seasons if Australia is open, but, I always use the sport analogy, but, I feel like, I got really warmed up with Hurricane Agatha in Mexico in May. It was like, and I really felt like I kind of got back into the rhythm with chasing after not chasing for months. And wow, it's just been kind of a slow start here in the Atlantic. So I'm kind of, ready to go, and just sort of, just kind of, watching and waiting and just seeing what happens. I do think that the action is going to come soon. So like a lot of you guys, I'm just kind of like, yeah, just keeping that eye peeled east.
Okay.
So I really do thank you guys. I'm just going to do a couple admin things here. Tim reached out, I guess it was over a year ago. We talked about doing this even in person, and maybe do it next year. We may do that. Ardmore, Oklahoma seems to be a great area that Tim and I keep talking about, to do this little mini summit sometime in the fall, late summer next year. So we'll keep you attest to that if we actually do that next year or not. All eyes are for February right now. Tickets are available. Tim, of course, I'm going to have a couple announcements here. Tim and I have already talked about this earlier in the spring. We are going to do the awards again, just like we did last time. And Tim will present those awards, and it will be somewhere.
No better presenter than Tim. I mean, Tim,
Yeah,
it's another of his many skills.
So and spread the word here as much as you can. We're going to be doing the awards, and Tim will be presenting. So we'll have our keynote speaker, and then Tim will either be before or after the keynote. I'm not really sure how we're going to work that out yet. But are we gonna stay with the name Stormy Awards, Tim? I think that worked out pretty well. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. Oh,
You're still
Tim,
muted,
you're
Tim.
muted.
Okay. Yes, we will
Yeah.
try to stay
Yeah.
with the same theme. Yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of an announcement. One of the announcements we had here from Storm Chasing Summit was we are going to do the Stormy Awards again, presented by Tim. Tim is going to control everything of that. It's all him. It worked out so great. Had such great feedback. The other thing is we are going to have a panel again, just like we did last time. It's probably going to be a little different scope. We'll have some different people up there. Jeff and Tim were amazing last time, so they may or may not be on that panel. More than likely, it's up to them. I'm not going to force it upon them, but the feedback we got on that panel was amazing. We'll probably do some different scope depending on what happens. There's so much topics out there that they can be brought up in that panel.
Yep.
And we're gonna more likely do that during the middle of the day Saturday. The other topic we have is the format of the summit is going to be a little different this year. So like I said before, we're going all 3 days. Friday is going to be nothing but education. We are going to have breakout rooms with different education. We're going to have a CPR class going on, first aid class going on. That's going to be a dedicated room. And then we're going to have some radar classes going on at the same time. And then we're going to have some intermediate meteorology going, and when we're working all this, Friday, we're not going to really have a big presentation day. It's just about education. And, we want to get the newer chaser people, and even Josh, I can get him in there teaching how to chase hurricanes. I mean, I don't know. We'll figure that out. But, we're going to have some different breakout rooms on Friday, and then we'll have a social Friday night. With COVID, kind of it's gone now. I'm not even worried about COVID at this point. So my plan is to go ahead and have that social probably at 9 o'clock on Saturday, on Friday, and then we'll kick off into Saturday. Saturday will be, and by the way, it'll start at 6 p.m. All those educational classes will be at 6 p.m. on Friday. What we're doing on Friday during the day is bringing in police and fire, and they're going to be taught some basic chasing and basic meteorology to get the police and fire and everybody kind of on the same page to interact with chasers. So, just trying to help the community as a whole that way with our public safety community. So you guys can attend to that. It's going to be free of charge during the day. And then the summit will be, that Friday night will be a different story. On Saturday, we're going to have our different presentations, just like we've been doing. We'll have different people present. We'll have different people have different topics. We'll have the Stormy Awards, and then we plan on having a dinner that night. with a keynote speaker, just kind of like what we did last year. No change in that, other than we're going to condense all those speakers into that Saturday instead of trying to just cram everybody in. We'll have less speakers, but same amount of topics. Something we're doing new, and I want every one of y'all listening and watching today to be prepared for. On Sunday morning at 8 o'clock until noon on Sunday, we are going to allow y'all, the public, and Jeff and I have been working on this, and we have talked about this about 3 times. We are going to open it up to any chaser that wants to present, either hurricanes, whatever you want to present. We're going to give you 20 minutes to get up there and do your case study, just like what you saw today. Why'd you chase? How'd it work? Did it not work? Teach whatever you want to do. You're gonna have 20 minutes. The only caveat is it's going to go through us. Ryan Pitt's on here. We're going to have some other people QC what you're going to present, which is quality control for some of y'all that don't understand that. We're going to look at that, and we are going to present that for 20 minutes, and we're going to try to get as many in as we can that morning. So we're going to allow y'all to present your cases. So, I think, if Jeff wants to talk about this, it was his idea. He brought it to me and I loved it. And so that's what we're going to do on Sunday.
Well, thanks, Eric. I think if you look at the AMS and NWA in their format, very successful, is they bring in people, all walks, right? And they talk about all different kinds of things, from social science to NOAA side to the people out in the field. And if you have a well-presented 15, 20-minute presentation, you get through a lot of people, right? A lot of different case studies, a lot of different situations, and you have a variety for everybody. And so I think it elevates the conference, and I think it's I think you'll see enrollment increase, as well as it's just a much better education, and it just raises the bar. And this has been my experience with AMS and NWA. They're both fantastic organizations, and that's how they do their format. 15-minute segments. It's very locked down. You start at 9, you're done at 9:15. Next speaker's going. It's like clockwork, right?
Yep.
And they all put on fabulous presentations, and that's what we need to do, as well as the hurricane. Some of the hurricane conference, same kind of format, right? Just those hour, 15, 30-minute presentations, and they're nice presentations.
Yeah.
It'll also be like Storm Chaser karaoke.
That's what you should call it.
Tim. Except no drinking, right?
Wait, who said that?
Karaoke. I think that's some great branding right there.
Jeff, I think that's your I might have to quote you on that. So we really have no other question. The last announcement I have is the scholarship. We've only had 3 people put in for the scholarship. So you students out there, spread the word. The scholarship's still out there. We are going to make that final decision probably on October 1st. We have a board of directors meeting. And then we're going to get so we have some outside sources that are also going to have some input on the scientific world. In the scientific world, for one well-known photography is in on it, and we're going to make that decision on the award winner for the scholarship. $1,500 scholarship is what's being awarded.
Nice.
That will be for the January or the spring semester. So it'll be awarded in January, the money itself. And so right now, there's plenty of opportunity to put in. We've got a few candidates out there. We just need some more, just to try to have everybody in on this that can possibly be put in on it. Of course, the caveats on that, you've got to be in a STEM world or a photojournalism world, either video or still photography in that realm of academia. And so we'll go down that road here over the next month or so and then make an announcement. More than likely, we'll make the winning announcement in November, more than likely, and that'll be for the spring semester. So I really do thank you guys for everything. Like I said, this was just kind of a bunch of guys talking weather, and that's what was the intent. And Tim, this was your idea, and I think it worked out great. The technology I hate technology, and I thank Ryan for helping me get this going back again after the catastrophe I created. So thank you guys so much. You guys have a great Sunday, and have a safe hurricane season, and we'll see you in February.
Bye.
Thanks, Eric. Bye-bye, everybody.